It's almost 1 o'clock, and since everybody is observing such silence, we'll get started with our meeting. I'm going to call it to order and begin by asking Councillor Uhrig to read our land acknowledgement.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We would like to begin by acknowledging that we are meeting on the traditional lands and treaty territory of the Saugeen Ojibwe Nation, which includes the Chippewas of Nawash Unceded First Nation and the Chippewas of Saugeen First Nation. We also recognize the Métis, whose ancestors shared this land and these waters. We extend our gratitude to all Anishinaabe and Métis peoples and their descendants past, present, and future, who continue to care for and inhabit these lands and tend these waters.
Thank you, Councillor. And now I'll just ask you to join me in a moment of silent reflection. Thank you. Is there any disclosure of pecuniary interest around the horseshoe? Seeing none, I just remind you that you can announce it at any time that it occurs to you. Are there any announcements today? Councillor Uhrig.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Actually, I have 3 today. One is a little early, but I'm going to say Christmas on the Bay is coming up in about 2.5 weeks, November 30th to December 3rd. Would be down at Market Square beside Meaford Hall. We had a great year last year and hope to build on that and even have more people in this year. So anyway, people want information on that. It's at christmasonthebay.ca. You can learn more about that event. Secondly, the Meaford Culture Foundation is on this Wednesday, the 15th, is starting its Christmas online auction. Runs November 15th to 30th, and this is one of our fundraisers that enables that organization to raise funds to support arts and cultural initiatives in the community, as well as supporting Meaford Hall improvements and refurbishments. And the last one is the Institute of Southern Georgian Bay, having, as I'm sure many of you know, and hopefully many have registered for already, in our own Meaford Hall this Friday, the new ways to financing the housing affordability gap is happening. So there's 2 sessions, one at 9 to 12:30 in the morning and one from 12:30 to 3 p.m. in the afternoon. These are really valuable platforms that the Institute of Southern Georgian Bay puts on to give people a better understanding, and it's a forum to put forth ideas on how to combat this huge affordability gap that we're faced with. So I think that's a really valuable forum that people should look to attend. Thank you.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor Keaveney.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. And I believe you and I will both be at that event on Friday. And I wanted to just take a moment to congratulate our Meaford Chamber of Commerce on their very successful Meaford Dragons event that took place this past week. And many of you will have been following that or will have attended, but in case anyone missed it, Tracy Marsh was the big winner with her House in Order business. And she also won the Audience Choice Award, which is sponsored by our Meaford Rotary Club. And second place went to Lisa Almond, and she has a mobile pet grooming business. Tracy won just over $8,000 worth of in-kind prizes in cash, and Lisa took home $4,550 in in-kind prizes and cash. So congratulations to the winners and all of the contestants, and to the Chamber of Commerce for continuing this really, really important event. Thank you.
Councillor Greenfield.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just following up on Councillor Uhrig and his announcement about the great event on the Market Square, Christmas on the Bay. The Meaford Public Library is joining in to a degree with the Christmas on the Bay festivities, and the library folk have a great many activities coming up. From that November 30th to Sunday, December 3rd, it starts off with a Christmas book flood. These are books that have been donated by the Friends of the Meaford Library. And any books that are sold, the donations will go to the Meaford Food Bank and outreach. There will be festive crafts. for the 4 days, wreath making and judging. Again, the Friends of the Meaford Library are involved in that. A holiday scavenger hunt for 4 days, all day on those 4 days. It's getting better, even better. Hot chocolate will be served, and I understand they have big mugs and small mugs for anyone who wants to come in and partake. And then likely the most important event, Sunday, December 3rd from 12 to 2 p.m. The jolly old elf comes to the Meaford Public Library. Santa will visit December 3rd, Sunday, 12 to 2. Now, I understand Mr. Claus has been warned of, there have been some heavy truck traffic around the library going down Tropez Street the last couple of weeks. Santa says he's put up with seagulls, jet planes, satellites. Big trucks ain't nothing. Thank you.
Other announcements. I'll go to you in just a moment, Mr. Smith, but I should mention, even though I wasn't there in person, I did have the privilege of writing a letter of congratulations to Gord Harris out in Bognor on Saturday night. They celebrated the 50th anniversary of his company, Grey Bruce Coatings and Insulation. And I said in my letter that anybody who, in 1973 had the audacity to start a business in Bognor and claim all of Grey and Bruce counties as his market, probably had something pretty good going. And he certainly added a lot of value to home builders and renovators and home buyers over the years in the whole region, making their homes, a little less costly to heat and a lot more healthy and safe. So anyway, congratulations to Gord, 50 years in business in Bognor. Over to you. Sorry, go ahead, Deputy. Councillor Greenfield.
Sorry, Your Worship. You mentioned Bognor, and I would be remiss in announcing that on Sunday, November 26th, from 2 to 4 p.m., there is going to be a performance at the Bognor Community Center. It is called Acapella Sound. A woman's vocal harmony group featuring tunes from past to present, bringing harmony to a resounding level of song and entertainment for the whole family to enjoy. Donations are accepted at the door, and I understand they have quite a list of songs, some of them going back almost as far as I am, and some quite recent, and I think there will be some songs of the season thrown in there too. So Sunday, November 26th, 2 to 4. Roger. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. And now over to our acting CAO, Matt Smith.
Thank you, Mayor Kettner. Two things from me today. The first is to let you and the public know that the annual Wellbeing Survey is now open and will be so until November the 30th. The survey is one of the action items in the Wellbeing Plan and helps us track progress towards its goals and generates a lot of local data that supports our future planning in areas like crime prevention, mental health needs, addictions, sports for seniors and youth. You can fill out the survey by going to meaford.ca/wellbeing or by giving us a call on 519-538-1060, extension 1110, and we'll get a paper copy to those who need it. And then one new staff member's with us today. Brian Patey has joined the Meaford Public Library in a temporary role as the library assistant for circulation. So welcome, Brian.
Were there any other announcements? I was remiss in not thanking Councillor Bell for the excellent Remembrance Day observation on Sykes Street in Meaford. The highway closed so that we could do it properly, and school band, pipe band, soldiers from the 4th Canadian Division Training Center. It was really well done and very well received. Lots of people are very happy to have a full observance of Remembrance Day back in our town. So we'll move on now to public participation, and members of the public are encouraged to provide council with their comments and questions. Presentations must be prearranged with legislative services before the agenda is released and are limited to 10 minutes. If a member of the public wishes to make a deputation on items on the council agenda or to ask a public question, they may do so either in person at the council chambers or remotely via Zoom, phone, or internet. Members of the public wishing to make a deputation or ask a public question must register in advance with legislative services by 10 in the morning the day of the meeting. And you can do that by contacting the deputy clerk, at meaford.ca. or 519-538-1060, extension 1100. An email with access information will be sent to those who register for remote participation. Deputations are limited to 5 minutes and public questions to 2 minutes. And also a reminder that the public can watch this meeting live via the Municipality of Meaford's YouTube channel, www.meaford.ca/YouTube. So we have a presentation today, and we also have a deputation. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce Sonia Reichel of the Georgian Triangle Humane Society, who is bringing us an amended request for support. Sonia?
That's great. Thank you. Good afternoon. Thank you very much for having me. I'm here today with a colleague, Mel, who is our philanthropy team lead, and we're both thrilled to be here in front of you. It is about, I'm going to say 9 or 10 months since I was in front of you previously. And now, as you have said, we have an amended budget request for 2024 and beyond. We have taken the time to work together with the 6 municipalities that we serve in the South Georgian Bay region to reapproach the municipality of Meaford to ask for support for our regional center for pets and people. So who do I look to for slides? Oh, I have a clicker. Wonderful. So I will give a little bit of an overview of the Georgian Triangle Humane Society. We have been serving our communities for the last 20 years, and the primary communities that we serve is the South Georgian Bay region. So that includes Meaford, Great Highlands, Blue Mountains, Collingwood, Clearview, and Wasaga Beach. We have about 4,000 pets that use our programs and services every single year. And we are faced with an immediate urgent challenge, which we are in a facility which is bursting at the seams, which brings me in front of you today. As an overview, we provide a variety of programs and services to this municipality that are considered an augmentation of animal control and enforcement of local bylaws, such as your responsible pet ownership bylaw. We provide access to spay-neuter surgery, to rabies vaccinations, core vaccinations, microchipping. We provide reunification of lost animals from our communities. We welcome youth. We have about 2,500 youth that have come in and used our programs and services so far to date. And we provide a pet food bank service. And so far to date, we have given out 20,000 meals to pet owners in our community that are experiencing need, which is 5,000 more meals than were given out this time last year. In addition to that, we work with our community to keep pets with their families during times of crisis, such as food insecurity or housing insecurity. To that end, we have an emergency boarding service that works with pet owners that are experiencing temporarily homelessness or are fleeing from domestic violence. And we have an emergency medical assistance program that works to help pet owners whose pets are experiencing a one-time emergency, not have to give up their pet or euthanize their pet, but can keep their pet in that family unit. So a variety of programs and services that we currently provide. We are facing a challenge that the South Georgian Bay region is faced with, which is we have a rising population and a growing need from our community for services that we provide. Every day we receive dozens of calls from our community members asking for help, and it is beyond what we are able to provide at this time. We have animals in our garage, we have our kennels are full, we have cages in our hallway, We have used now foster homes to house the animals that are with us. When we open up our hospital for bookings, we open them up for 3-month periods of time. And what we offer are access to spay neuter surgery so we can provide a long-term solution towards pet overpopulation. The 3-month time frame of booking books up within a couple of hours, and then we receive weeks of frustrated phone calls from pet owners, really truly wanting to be a responsible pet owner, but not able to afford some of the expenses that are out there these days. So that explains our need for a new home. We are currently on a site that is owned by the town of Collingwood. We are using parking all along the roadway, which is very dangerous. Public Works has graciously allowed us to use some of their parking, but parking is one example of just how we have overextended the use of our current facility. We have images there of animals recovering on the floor of the entry to the hospital, and those crates there are located in our garage and storage area. And we have a vision for the future. We are the current owners of 5 acres of land in Collingwood. We purchased that land in 2021, and we are in the middle of a $16 million campaign to build a 19,000 square foot building, which will be called a regional center for pets and people. This building will be able to allow us to double the number of homeless animals that we can take in and triple the number of animals that we can provide spay neuter surgery to. And here's a little bit on the numbers. We expect 30 to 40,000 visitors annually that will be coming to the facility. We will have volunteer opportunities for over 600 volunteers. We will be able to provide 8,500 animals with spay neuter surgery every single year, which we anticipate will then match the need that we are seeing in the community. We will provide 6,000 youth with meaningful programming that help them grow and develop their social and emotional skills, especially that are formed when working with the animals that are in our care. And as I said at the beginning, we'll be able to double the number of homeless animals that come to us, much of which come to us from Meaford. So as you know, we have a pound contract with Meaford that has us take in stray dogs that are found in the municipality, but we also take in surrendered dogs that come to us from Meaford, stray cats and surrendered cats, and those numbers are always in a state of growth. And here we have added a slide that you won't have seen from last year. This slide outlines where you're going to see an intersection between the work of the Georgian Triangle Humane Society and the work of the municipality of Meaford. Those intersections being strong economic support, social services, animal control, and enforcement of those bylaws, or working together to provide access so that our pet parents can be responsible pet owners. And then here we have taken time with our municipal partners to break down the use of our service across the 6 municipalities that we serve. You will see these numbers are 2022 numbers, and that Meaford in 2022, we had 40 cats that we took in, 11 dogs, 24 stray cat and dogs. We provided 136 spay neuter surgeries. 47 folks used our pet support services, and that number is much different now in 2023 because we have pet depots now in this area as well. And we had 13 volunteers traveling from the Meaford area to come volunteer with our facility. I will say that 2023 has been a big year for stray dogs in Meaford, and we are on track now for, I believe it's between 30 and 35 stray dogs coming from this area. And in order to formulate our amended ask that brings us here today, what we have done is we have taken the population of the 6 regions and crossed that with the average assessment. We have created a proportional percentage as a result, and our total ask of the 6 municipalities that we serve over 10 years to allow us to realize this vision for a regional center for pets and people and continue to offer this essential public service. We are asking for a contribution of 9.3% towards our project, which is 1.5 million, divided across the 6 municipalities over 10 years. So what that means for Meaford is a total request of, they switched around the columns on me. Okay, a total request of 187,500, which per year, so for our budgeted year of 2024, is $18,750. So today we ask that you consider this request and give it thoughtful consideration, and please make a motion to move this to budget deliberations so that it can be considered for the 2024 budget. And thank you so much for your support and your partnership. It's been invaluable to us.
Thank you very much, Sonia. Are there any questions for her?
I forgot one part, sorry.
Go ahead.
I always do this. So one thing we'd like to provide to the municipality of Meaford, should this be approved, is recognition along the front walking corridor of our Regional Centre for Pets and People. This image shows it a little bit here, but as you can see, we have two entrances to the building, a main entrance and a hospital entrance. We would put a recognition plaque right in the front where our corridor is with any of the municipalities that partner with us on this build, to really illustrate our partners to those 30 to 40 visitors that are coming to us on a regular basis. Thank you. Now we can go for questions.
Sure. Questions? Councillor Bartley.
Thank you, Mayor Kentner. Now, on your graph where it jumped up from 2020 to 2023, pretty near doubled, is that a residual from COVID where everybody got pets? Do you not think that number is going to decline here shortly?
A lot of it has to do with COVID and the supply and demand that happened as a result of a lot of people choosing to either buy or adopt a pet during COVID, and the folks that decided to breed dogs during that time to meet that need. So there might be some residual effects that start to curve that back down. But what we're also seeing as a result is more and more millennials that are looking to get pets as part of their family, as well as a population that is growing with leaps and bounds. So, so as we look to the future, we see, if not exactly the same need that we're seeing now, especially for access to care, but we see that growing.
So do you rely on user pay system where everybody that brings a pet through there, a pet goes through your system, pays for the expenses, total expenses of your program, or is it subsidized through the municipalities?
Yeah, that's a great question. We do not receive any ongoing government support that supports our work. And for those that are bringing us pets, we believe that our priority is focused on helping the person that comes to us and the pet that comes to us. So we will ask if there might be consideration around something like a surrender fee if a stray litter of kittens is found in your backyard and you would like to bring them in. But it is absolutely not anything that is mandatory, because if we are to mandate that, then that means that the animals that are coming to us are more at risk of having to go somewhere else or not being taken in whatsoever. So our adoption fees, our spay-neuter fees, what we would call surrender fees, but more a gentle consideration to help support our cause, are by no stretch covering our ongoing operations. What we rely on is generous members of our community, individuals or corporations, or hopefully municipalities that can support our work so we can continue to offer it into the communities.
Other questions? Deputy Mayor?
Thank you very much, Your Worship, and thank you, Sonia, for your presentation. I think we all agree pets are very important members of many, many families. And Meaford being recognized as a dog-friendly community, we will certainly, I think we can assure you, we will discuss this at the time of our budget coming up next month. But I'm just curious to know from your perspective, you've given us kind of a hard and fast number of $18,750 a year over 10 years. So I'm just wondering, we know it's going to be a tough budget. We know there are a lot of inflationary pressures that are going to be hitting us hard this year. And if there are any other options, for example, if we spread that over 15 years or a lesser amount, are you kind of open to whatever support a municipality is able to give? Or what kind of feedback have you been receiving from other councils?
Yeah, two very good questions. I'll start with the feedback that we've had from other councils and other municipalities, and so far that has been very positive. We have presented now to 4. This is our 4th municipality, and everyone is around a similar timeline in terms of having these conversations and looking to get back to us as soon as we can. We were pleased that Collingwood made a contribution last year to our campaign. They were seeing similar pressures, and now they are considering the 10-year pledge going forward. So conversations have been positive. I think municipalities are looking to see this as a partnership in this as a South Georgian Bay region, that all 6 municipalities are getting on board and supporting this initiative. In terms of budget constraints, we are grateful for support of this project in whatever size that is meaningful and is able to be accommodated. We're giving what we thought would be consideration for an intentional breakdown that could make sense based on what we had put together, that average assessment in population. So I hope that answers the question.
Councillor Bartley?
Thank you, Mayor Kettner. One more question. So you're asking for 10%. So do you believe you can make it fly paying for the 90%?
Aiming for I see what you're saying. Currently, we have raised $7.1 million towards our $16 million target.
I have a question, if I may. This afternoon, just before I left for the meeting, I heard on the news in Owen Sound that it's going to be necessary for pet owners to, with an emergency situation, to drive up to 2 hours to get emergency attention to a pet. So that sounds like the whole Grey Bruce area, pretty much.
Mm-hmm.
And I just wondered if you know anything about that and what the reasons are.
There's a variety of factors. You're right in hearing that the closest emergency veterinary hospital is about a 2-hour drive away. Especially if you're faced with weather conditions, then the chances of getting there in some cases aren't possible at all. Concurrent to that, we are also experiencing a national veterinary shortage, which is making those veterinary clinics that we do have in our area have to be very mindful about how they use their resources. And some of those clinics that may have been able to provide emergency service to their clients, let's say on the weekends or evenings, are now having to be faced with veterinary shortages and not being able to provide that service as they once were able to. What that means for pet owners is that there is not easily accessible emergency services on statutory holidays, after 4 p.m. in many cases, or 6 p.m. and on the weekends. And I think that this regional center will provide a solution for that, being one that employs 3 veterinarians, 4 RVTs, as well as veterinary assistants, but has the capacity to really think outside the box when it comes to finding solutions for pet owners, one of which might be an emergency veterinary clinic that helps to bridge that gap between the pet owners are experiencing in the South Georgian Bay region.
And just I learned when I was at your sod turning, which is quite a few months ago now, there's a component for youth in this that I don't think has been very well explained, and I just wondered if it's a little bit like how bringing troubled young people together with horses, if in the right program, can do wonders for the young people. And it's something along those lines. Would you explain that?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. Thank you very much. Many youth in our communities are being faced with mental health challenges. And in 2017, we were given an opportunity through the Ontario Trillium Foundation to pilot a program that would allow us to explore how, if we provided programming that allowed youth to understand how animals thought, felt, and communicated, and education around that, how that could impact their mental health. Through that 3-year period of time, we were able to measure a 25% increase in the social and emotional skill development of the 2,000 youth per year that were able to go through that programming. Simply put, when they came into our Humane Society, they were able to relate to the homeless animals that would feel abandoned, scared, unsure, and through that journey, improve their abilities to be able to communicate with peers, with parents, with teachers, And so we have taken the learnings from that program. We now offer a variety of programs to youth in our communities. But what we are severely limited by is facility space. We can't run our program outside of our building because we need the animals to be able to have the youth work with. If you've been in our facility, you can understand why we have limited spaces already. In our new regional center, we will have a community room, which will be solely focused on education around the human-animal bond for vulnerable sectors of our demographics, one of which will be youth, another of which will be seniors in our community that are perhaps experiencing isolation or loneliness. And we will work to provide opportunities for those programs to expand. And just to finish up, our estimation through this regional center will be 6,000 youth that will be able to go through the programs on an annual basis.
Thank you very much. So Sonia and Mel, thank you.
Thank you very much for having us.
Moving on, we have a deputation now, and this is dealing with something that comes up later in our agenda. The temporary zoning bylaw amendment Z10 2023 regarding 245-690 Side Road 22. So I'm going to call on Dave Wilcox. You have 5 minutes, Dave.
Yes, okay, thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. On behalf of my wife Kathy, that's her right there to my right, and myself, we would once again like to express some of our concerns regarding the rezoning. Item number 1 is the fact we're very concerned about the possibility of the 3-year term being extended if this temporary rezoning is approved. In their reports, both the County of Grey and the Municipality of Meaford have recommended that this 3-year term not be extended. We, however, are concerned about the possibility of the new build not being completed. Therefore, this term would be extended and our property value would continue to be under normal value. Under normal market value. Is there a possibility, if this is approved, is there a possibility of this term being capped at the 3-year limit? Item number 2 is the number of vehicles that are on site as well as being stored outside of the permitted area. There's a proposed 10 vehicle limit, which is being exceeded. This was to be completed by today's date, which has not yet taken place. Is this only the first sign of non-compliance to the Municipality of Meaford bylaws? Item number 3, the number of vehicles on Side Road 22 has increased significantly. Item number 4, the number of vehicles going in or out of the driveway. The majority of these vehicles do not stop when exiting the driveway. This is a very situation, and we have seen near collisions, and my wife Kathy has been very closely in a collision herself. In closing, we would like to thank you for your time and would appreciate your consideration of our concerns. Thank you very much. And I would like to say that just prior to the meeting, I was talking to James Harrison here, and he relieved me of some of these concerns, but in the meantime, we just would really like to make sure that the bylaws are being followed if this is approved.
Thank you very much,
Thank you.
Dave. I don't believe we have any public questions, so council inquiries. No council inquiries. Okay. Okay, that's it. Then we are ready to move into our consent agenda. And these items have been before committee of the whole for discussion. Council may choose to pass them or these bylaws with one motion, or a member may request an item or items to be pulled for separate consideration. Are there any of these items you want to deal with separately? Councillor Urick?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And yes, item A, the council priorities update, and council B, just make it A because we'll be talking about TCE afterwards as well. So I won't do it under the auspice of the priorities. So just A.
Anyone else have any directions? Okay, well then we can go ahead and
Sorry, Mr. Mayor,
sorry.
just to make sure Councillor Uric has got what he wants. In order to talk about the TCE stuff, we do need to pull item B as well.
Thank you. We are talking about,
we're going to pass a number of these in one motion, so I think you better take B out as well, I think.
I think so.
sure.
Okay, done. So then we're going to vote on items C, D, E, and F. And I'm going to just read what the recommendations are so that everyone is clear what we're voting on, and those who may not have an agenda in front of them can understand what we're doing. So item C is our new customer service standards policy. The recommendation is that bylaw 2023-66 being a bylaw to adopt a customer service standards policy be taken as read a first, second, and third time and finally passed. Item D is the Integrity Commissioner reappointment, and the recommendation is that Council of the Municipality of Meaford, 1, approve a single source award to Principals Integrity for the provision of Integrity Commissioner services, and 2, enact a bylaw to reappoint Principals Integrity as the municipality's Integrity Commissioner. Item E is significant weather event policy, and the recommendation is, be it resolved that bylaw 2023-68, being a bylaw to adopt a significant weather event policy, be taken as read a first, second, and third time and finally passed. And item F is the 2024/2025 MTO Connecting Links Program application. The recommendation that Council of the Municipality of Meaford approve the submission of the 2024-25 MTO Connecting Links Program application for the Syke Street Road resurfacing project. So we need a mover and seconder for these motions. Deputy Mayor Keaveney and Councillor Greenfield. Any discussion? If you're ready to vote, all in favor. And all those items are approved. Now we'll go back to item A. And I guess we need a motion to put it on the table. It's moved by Councillor Uric, seconded by Councillor Forder. And you asked Councillor Uric to have this item pulled, so perhaps you would like to speak to it first.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would. So the Project Charter 2.4 Rural Telecommunications Conduit Framework. I would like to possibly amend that to actually remove the word rural in hindsight of having a chance to kind of look at this and think about it. It kind of makes sense that this should extend to telecommunications for all of the municipality. Matt and I did speak before, and this isn't something that necessarily becomes onerous. It's more about making sure we have the processes and procedures in place when we are doing infrastructure work, that we are making sure that we are making room for telecommunications infrastructure. So my amendment would be to change just remove the word rural from that, make it all encompassing for the municipality.
Now, do we need, if that is a motion, we need a seconder.
Yes.
So anyone wish to second that motion? Deputy Mayor? Discussion. Would you like to speak to it then, Mr. Smith?
Not particularly. I think it's something reasonable. It doesn't commit the municipality to anything because this was a project to look into how to do something rather than to physically start doing it. So I think that's totally reasonable from our point of view.
Any questions, Councillor Bartley?
Yes, thank you, Mayor Kettner. Councillor Uric, what page are you wanting this word removed from? And how advantageous is it to do that? Like it's all encompassed now. You're removing it's still all encompassed. I don't understand.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Actually, right now it literally out of scope was urban. So this would remove rural from all of that. If reading through it, if you remove the word rural in all cases, it just becomes we need to look at the telecommunication infrastructure in the municipality as a whole. What was originally positioned was that it was just going to be concentrating on the rural aspect. Doesn't need to be that. So if we're doing major infrastructure work downtown somewhere in Meaford, and we are digging and causing, doing large construction work, it makes more sense to, at that point, be putting in the necessary conduit to facilitate telecommunications infrastructure, as opposed to having companies come in and do it afterwards. We've already experienced that, seeing some work happening downtown through various fiber being put in. So when we're doing work, whether it be sewer work or whatever, we already have the ground open. We have the ability to actually put in some conduit at that point, and then just worry about the framework of how that is going to be shared with the various providers later. So removing the word rural just makes it open to the whole municipality.
Through Mr. Mayor as well, I think just worth adding that I think the motion can be as simple as making it telecommunications conduit framework instead of rural telecommunications conduit framework. If this was to pass, we'd go back and just update a few bits of the project charter just to make that make sense, because as Councillor Urick says, one of the things that's specifically stated in out of scope is in the urban boundaries, and so we'd want to remove that. So we do a bit of tidy up before we uploaded this onto the website and so on, but it's a pretty easy change in theoretical terms, and I don't think we want to do a motion where we're having to edit each line of this.
Any other discussion? So we don't have to vote on this. We're just going to.
So we do have to vote on it. Yes.
I'm not sure I have a seconder. Oh, sorry. Okay. All right. All in favor. And that is carried. Thank you. Now, dealing with item B, I want.
So sorry, Mr. Mayor. That was just to deal with the amendment. So we now do need to vote or have discussion on the council priorities adoption as a whole.
Okay. Yeah, section B is separate. Okay. So we need a mover and seconder for that. We
already have that.
So we just have to vote.
Unless anybody has anything else they want to talk about or amend, yes.
I see no other hands. Okay, all in favor? And that is carried. Item B, I just want to read the recommendation so that everyone is clear. That the municipality of Meaford, 1, authorize the execution of an agreement with Ainley Group to perform an enhanced project management role for the TCE pump storage project. 2, direct staff to draft a terms of reference for a community steering committee for council's consideration. 3, direct staff to establish an internal working group consisting of the mayor, deputy mayor, interim CAO, director of engineering, and director of development services, plus a County of Grey representative and any other staff deemed necessary by the CAO to lead the municipality's work on this project. 4, direct staff to work with representatives from Ainley Group, Strategy Corps, and TCE to develop a comprehensive project plan, clearly identifying roles and responsibilities. And 5, authorize the recruitment of a project administrator, pumped storage, municipal staff position on a contract basis to coordinate the proposed community steering committee and support the CAO in relation to the pump storage project. So I need a motion to put that on the floor and a seconder. Councillor Bell, thank you, and seconded by Deputy Mayor. Discussion. Councillor Urick.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I'm looking for a little clarity. And I know I've brought this up before, and it's going to be economic development versus project manager. So when I reread through this, I would like some clarity on the overlap between the Ainley project manager role and this proposed project administrator role, because to me it feels like we're already securing Ainley to do this work that a lot of project administrator is kind of overseeing. So bear me out. So with the fact that Strategy Corp and Ainley, and I think one of the most important parts of this, I totally agree with, is the community group involvement. So having that involved, to me, this role as the intermediary between Ainley and Strategy Corp and the municipality and the public, I'm still harkening back to this and wrestling with this economic development position, because to me, this is all through the lens of when you're looking at the CBA and what kind of arrangements or plans or negotiations are going to be made. The project administrative role feels a little less senior to me in terms of dealing with our overall long-term goal from an economic development perspective, as well as, like I said, Ainley is already coming to the table with the project management expertise. So whoever's in that chair should be working with them regardless. And if that is an economic development person that now is dealing with the community, still leading the group, that community group, as the project administrator would, I would just like to see what the clarity is between that project role, the two project roles, Ainley and that, and why there appears to be overlap to me.
Thank you, Councillor Urick. Let me try and answer that in a coherent manner. I think inevitably, whenever you're dealing with these big projects, job titles get confusing because there's only so many different ways you can frame the word project. In this case, when we talk about project manager and having Ainley do that, it really is for some of their technical and long-term experience and their ability to deal with some of the environmental assessment process and those kind of things. When I talk about a project administrator, we really are talking about an administrative member of staff within the municipality. And put fairly simply, I and none of my team have enough time to put into doing this as we should be doing. So, I actually have an email in my inbox from one of the people at Ainley that I haven't replied to for 4 days because I need to do that and we don't have enough time. So having somebody who is focused on the proposed community steering committee, focused on the internal working group that we'll be putting together, agendas, minutes, organizing those sorts of things, working with our team on public consultation, all that sort of stuff, will be incredibly valuable. And I think it's very necessary. It is designed to be a support role. It's not designed to be an out there in the public leading things role. I think from the economic development side and from a whole bunch of sides, the CAO is the role that needs to be doing a lot of that at this stage. This is big picture stuff that we don't know a huge amount about. It may be that during the course of this project that changes and we have different suggestions and we ask TC to pay for different things and there may be a different economic development role there. But I think at this stage, this is about getting the environmental assessment stuff off the ground. It's about getting the municipality's community input stuff off the ground and having somebody who can dedicate the time to doing this is important to us. I think that there's lots of work that's going to happen and this is, I think in the project charter that you've just approved, I think I wrote in there on several occasions, this is an outline, this is tentative because we just don't know enough yet to change it. So that role I think will develop over time. But yeah, right now it's definitely a support role for the municipality to make sure that we're contacting the right people, doing the right things, organizing things effectively and not have you pay either my rate or an Ainley project manager rate for some of the basic admin stuff.
Right. Yes. Having said that, so because when we discussed this originally, we talked about hiring potentially 2 ED individuals, one being the junior role, one being not necessarily a senior position, but at least a more senior position. What you're saying, I agree with. It still seems to me that this gives us an opportunity through TCE remuneration is to actually help pay for an ED person that would facilitate this between the 2 ED people we would have on staff, as well as create a through line for us to morph that person from being involved in those CBA negotiations in concert with senior management and yourself, because you're right. I respect the fact that all of our senior management are also already very busy. What I see this is a potential to create that person that does that, reports with the rest of senior management, does that, but it also morphs into a senior ED person after this is over and has already had a through line about the CBA and how that is going to affect long-term and economic development with the municipality, and that person now becomes kind of the anchor for ED for us. As opposed to a project administrator that you're going to say, okay, thanks for your 2 years of stuff, and now what do we do with ED?
3 years, Mayor. to be honest, disagree, which is fine. I think there were some conversations among some councillors, but nothing's ever got to a table about potential economic development roles. I think at this stage that is the wrong avenue to be taking. Again, very much my opinion, and that's why we've written this the way I've written this. I think we have an excellent working relationship with the county economic development team, who are very skilled in this, and I think that I expect it to be their Director of Economic Development, who is part of our internal working group on this, which brings in a lot of knowledge and stuff there. I don't think that with this project, we are anywhere near the stage where we could bring somebody in to do economic development that we would understand what they're doing related to this project. The other reason that, a couple of people have asked over the last couple of weeks why we're going out and doing this and getting Ainley to do the project management side and instead of doing that in-house as well. And I think my answer on this one is the same as the answer about that and the economic development side, is because right now, I don't think we'd get somebody with enough knowledge and experience to do it well for something like this that would inevitably be a short-term role. If we wanted somebody who was an absolute expert in this field, to be blunt, we're not paying enough. And I don't think that we'd be able to give them enough clarity on what our expectations are yet. It's not to say that doesn't happen in 6 months or 12 months, but right now, this is what I believe we need while we actually start to understand what this project actually is.
My last kick of the can. Respectfully, if Strategy Corp and Ainley are doing their job, that's the expertise. I don't see that person coming in having to be an expert in TCE, and that I see them as being an expert in the negotiation aspect, as being the facilitator between those two organizations and municipality and CAO and senior management. So that's why I have trouble saying that, yes, if you were bringing in somebody that needs to be a project manager that is proficient with TCE and all the technicalities that go with that, I would agree 100%. But that's why we have Ainley and Strategy Corp. I see this person as facilitating between the two. So I don't see that as being as much about that as it is about being economic development, concerned about our future and the vision that we have moving forward, respectfully.
Deputy Mayor?
Thank you, Your Worship, and I want to thank Councillor Urick for bringing all of this discussion forward. And if I can just build on your comments a little bit, and I absolutely do agree that we will be calling on the county for considerable support throughout this process. But to me, it comes back to, and we've beaten this word up, I think, every meeting that we talk about TC Energy, but the visioning. I think it's so critical that we get going with that process and really understand through that where economic development fits into everything that we're doing. So I did have two questions for you, Mr. Smith, if I may. One is related to that and understanding, we did, I think, touch on this at our last meeting about perhaps drawing in Think Compass and undertaking that visioning process, but kind of just where that fits into the outlined recommendations that we have here from Ainley. So I'll give you that question first and come back to my second question.
Okay, thank you. I think that what happens next in terms of whether or not a visioning exercise is part of this is part of item something on this list. One of these things talks about item 4 here, representatives mainly group strategy core and TCE and staff to develop a comprehensive project plan, clearly identifying roles and responsibilities. I think, whether we want to move forward with a visioning exercise and what that looks like, because I think that can mean a lot of different things to a lot of different people, fits very much within that. My intent is that very quickly after council passes this, should council pass it, we will be bringing together that internal working group that's described in item number 3. And the first conversation there is, what is it that we're trying to do? Because I think on the visioning side of things, that is one of the things that in my conversations with TCE, there was some degree of pushback on from the Ainley proposal. And so my intent of that project plan is that we can very easily go and say, this is what we believe that we need in order to successfully navigate this project, and here's why, and so on. Because as I think I said 2 weeks ago, I'm very keen that we get some degree of commitment from that organization for all of the steps that we want to take, rather than having to do it piecemeal one by one, because I think then we understand where we're going. Whereas if we have a plan to do 7 steps, but suddenly funding stops after step 4, we might have wanted to do something different earlier on to make that work. Whether that is Think Compass you reference, who is, for those who don't know, the economic development consultant that is retained by the county at present, or whether that's a bigger picture thing, because I think we need to be really clear when we're talking about all of this sort of stuff. This isn't just an economic development exercise. There is a huge amount of breadth to this. So it might be that they are absolutely the right people to do it. It might be that they're absolutely the right people to do part of something. It might be that we want to go and get a specialist consultant from more of a holistic community development kind of way that includes some economic development stuff. I think that's all things we need to determine, and to do that we need to spend the time to actually figure out what it is we're trying to achieve.
Go ahead. It's another question.
Thank you, Your Worship, and I really appreciate that response, Matt, because I think we all understand that what we're looking at is going to be an evolving process. I mean, we've got a lot of things outlined here, but yeah, we're just getting started, so to speak. My second question on page 4 of the Ainley report, the communications plan. I think we just barely touched on this on our last discussion, and understanding where Red Brick fits in, because throughout this document, there appears to be some duplication of efforts. And again, I know we just have to have those conversations between one organization and the other and understand who's going to do what. But I just see that Ainley suggesting, creating a communications plan. And I just thought we had Red Brick for communications. So how does that link together?
Thank you. That's a really good question as well. Just before I go to that, I will say that yes, this is evolving, and of those 5 things that are in the resolution, I'd expect all 5 of those things to be done within the next 3 months. So this is not the last decision you're making about any of this. It's very much the first one. So this is a step in the process, and we've committed that we will be back at least once a quarter with updates and new decisions to be made or new information. And so I think that's where some of this all ties in together as we figure out what our next steps are. With regards to the communication side of things, again, some of this is about us being clear about what it is that we want to achieve. We talk frequently about having Red Brick under contract with us. We have retained them to provide us some support on the occasions we need it, but we have no contract of work with them. And I think we have to look very carefully at what their best role is. My feeling is that they will be able to provide us with some strategic guidance, whereas this is very much talking about writing letters to the public and getting websites updated and things like that. But that is very much part of it. I know that the team at Ainley, sort of half expecting that this goes the way we think it's going to go today, have started to do some work on that communications plan, but I haven't seen it yet. And so once we do, that will give us a much better idea on where we're at. I think there is a huge advantage in having an organization with communications experience, and I've met the person that they've brought in at Ainley to do this piece of the work, who is connected very directly in with the people who are working on the project every day. I generally think that we want to have the least number of different companies involved in this, because otherwise every time you have the conversation, you've got to repeat the last 3 months worth of work in order to keep everybody up to speed. Whereas if Ainley are doing some of our communications, particularly the engagement side of things on the ground, they are the people that have the person sat in the desk next to them who will be working on the project and so have all of the information. I think Red Brick have a value. We need to understand what that is. And part of that is all about the next steps of this is actually piecing together exactly who is doing what and making sure there isn't any overlap. And I think that's the bit I'll finish on, is that the word overlap has been mentioned a couple of times today already, but also last week. It's my role and the role of the project administrator to make sure we're not paying for the same thing twice. We regularly as a municipality coordinate multiple different organizations to perform tasks on the same sort of project. This is what that is. This is about using each organization to the best of their skills to provide us as a municipality with what we want. It's not about duplication or having the same people do the same things.
Councillor Bell.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you for the really good conversation. Like all of us, we've looked through this, and I too have seen some overlap of some things.
But I'm totally in agreement with item 5 to have a project administrator. I think that I think this person will be a keystone in the entire works of everything. It's been absolutely terrific that TC Energy has had a public liaison officer, whom we all know. I think that's good and been doing a good job. I think one of the things that some of the people say about the municipality itself, that maybe we don't have enough voice in this in certain aspects. And I think that this person, with all of the other very technical, very top end people on a project of this magnitude, that this project administrator is most definitely needed in the position here in our staff to alleviate our staff from what has been mentioned, and that the recruitment of this person is also on its own is going to be a really responsible, heavy duty job to come up with the appropriate person at the end of the day that will be doing this for some period of time. So I can see us needing this, and when you can get someone of this caliber taking on a portfolio of this magnitude, and from my understanding, have that individual's salary paid, I think I would like to have that. So thank you for your comments and bringing to our attention about overlap. And if I had that job, I would be looking at making sure we aren't doubling and tripling efforts. I can definitely see that there will be those that will be looking at the subject matter where you will have a variety of people looking at that subject matter, and it will be the project administrator who, as our clerk has said, and our interim CAO, got to focus on what is before us all. So thank you for this good conversation this afternoon, fellow councillors, and I can support item 5.
Councillor Bartley.
Thank you, Mayor Kettner, and thank you for the confusing questions. You had me confused. I don't know how Matt got through it. Anyways, I'm missing something here. Everything that I've read or talked about this project is TCE is going to pay for a project manager to go negotiate a CBA for us. Our bill now is $3.5 million. And this thing that we're doing now makes the municipality know as much about pump storage as TCE does or anybody in the world. And I don't think the intent is there. So I know TCE has said they'll pay for a project manager. Is there a commitment that they're going to pay this? Because if we raise our hand today and these people are hired and they don't pay for it, the municipality's on the hook for $3.5 million. And I'm concerned about that.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, there is no commitment to $3.5 million at all in any of this. That is, that figure is in a proposal that has been provided to us from Ainley as things that they think we should be doing in order to do this. There is no commitment to any of it at all. It has formed the basis of what my recommendations are here for these initial steps about moving forward with the Community Safety Committee, Community Steering Committee, moving forward with a more detailed project plan and really doing more public engagement. What TCE have committed to, and I think it says this somewhere later on in the report, is that they have committed to both pay for the work that Strategy Corps are doing, that's already been approved by this council, to the work that Ainley are going to do, at least initially, and for a project administrator on staff. What they have then said is that we will need to go and talk to them on an individual step-by-step basis to ask for additional funding for these additional pieces of work, like a community visioning exercise, like potential visits to a pump storage facility, and so on. As I said a minute ago, I strongly believe that we need to put together a plan that we can take comprehensively and say, this is what we believe we need, and ask for that commitment for the entire package so that we can be doing things in a coherent way that means we're covering all of our bases. But yes, this proposal is significantly changing the municipality's approach to this. Earlier in the year, council hired Ainley to do technical review of studies, but not really to do anything with that except for tell us around this table whether or not those studies made sense. We also hired Strategy Core to do community benefits negotiation. And I think we need to be really careful that we understand that community benefits is just one faction, one portion of this work, in my eyes at least. It is very much looking about what does this community look like in 10 to 15 years when this project is, should it be approved and constructed? What will we be receiving in lieu of taxes or in lieu of the commitment that we would have if it was on standard municipal land rather than federal land on an ongoing basis from a massive multi-billion-dollar company in our municipality? This proposed approach includes all of that because we do need to do that, and it is very important that we look at community benefits. But it really steps back and says, before we can do that effectively, we need to understand what the impact on this community will be. And so a lot of the additional work that's proposed in here, both in terms of what I'm specifically asking for in the report today and some of the additional things that are in the Ainley proposal, is designed around us as a municipality actually understanding what it is that we're talking about. Because to be blunt, I really don't think we do. But it's also about making sure the community understand what's going on. To a certain extent, yes, we should know as much about pump storage as the people who are running this, if we want our community to feel comfortable that this is something that is of positive benefit to the community, that doesn't impact individual people negatively. Because the only way that we can do that is if we know some of the answers to the questions. If our answer to our question is, well, because TCE told us it was going to work like this, that's not going to get the public to really believe us in what we're saying. So I think most of this is about making sure that we don't just try and benefit from the project, but we also mitigate the impacts and we make our community as happy as they can be should this project go forward, by them being certain that the municipality has asked all of the right questions and talked to the right people and pushed where we should push and made sure that this is going to be a good, positive project for the municipality, not just something that we'll have to live through for the next 60 years.
Just to finish, thank you, Matt. Makes me feel a little bit better. We give money towards the hospital. None of us are going to be surgeons. We don't need to know how to take a heart out. If you're convinced that the municipality isn't going to be on the hook for any of these expenses, I'm good with this going forward. But it's just black and white that's what's going to happen, and it's $3.5 million. It's black and white on here. In 2015, I put my hand up because the one line in a 300-page report about closing bridges, because one line we missed that and we started closing bridges. It's saying in here we're going to spend $3.5 million, but if you're confident that that'll be managed differently, I'm good with that. Thank you.
Just through you, because I think it's worth really confirming this for those listening as well. Yes, there is no commitment to a specific amount in this. There is no commitment to specific activities in this. What the Ainley proposal is a proposal based on what they know right now, because they also don't know enough, because we need to get more information. And part of the reason we need them with us is so that they can help us ask the right questions. Because again, to be blunt, I don't know what the right questions to ask in a project situation like this, because it's so far beyond what any of us around this table have ever dealt with. So what will happen from here is that we will enter into an agreement. That's what number 1 is here, the execution of an agreement with Ainley Group to form an enhanced project management role. But that will all be on a time spent basis. It will all be based on what we as a municipality ask them to do. It won't be based on that specific proposal. We may well come forward again and say we should be doing various elements of this proposal. And to be honest, it may well be that over the course of the next 3 years, we should be spending $3.5 million on this to really do it right. But this does not commit us to that in any way, shape or form.
Councillor Greenfield.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you to Mr. Smith, I have 2 questions. And the first one is, who is going to be involved in the recruitment interviewing and hiring of this project administrator. The second one is about the internal working group, or pardon me, the community steering committee. Where are we going to get terms of reference to establish this committee? I don't favor. I don't know if there were terms of reference when Sir Adam Beck was created at Niagara over 110 years ago. I don't think we should use them. I don't think we should use the terms of reference, if there were any, that were used at the Ludington pump storage project in Michigan. So those two questions, if you can help me out with, Matt, please.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the project administrator position, as I say, is very much going to be a support position, administrative position within the municipality. So as it will report to me currently in the CAO long term, I will lead that process. Our HR team will be involved, and I imagine that we may bring in either Tori or Rob to be part of that, because they're sort of the internal people who'll be working with that position the most. In terms of the steering committee terms of reference, again, with the expectation that this was happening, the team at Ainley have started to do some work on that. So I'm hoping that we will be able to bring that forward next meeting, and certainly by the end of the year for council's approval. They will be based on best practices around municipal committees, but also, I think, in large part, the community steering committee that exists in the municipality of South Bruce at the moment about the deep geological repository process. That committee's existed for the last 4 or 5 years already and has been very successful in that community and doing all the things that we're talking about them doing. So no, this isn't a project. Terms of reference for this sort of group isn't about it being about a pump storage project. It's about how do we develop a committee that will be able to have input into an environmental and impact assessment process and a long-term corporate project. It's not saying that we would do the same things that happened 50 years ago or 100 years ago. It's about what we should be doing today for public engagement.
If anyone else has anything, I'd like to say something, but anyone else have more comments or questions? Go right ahead.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. And just a final question for you, Mr. Smith, in terms of your sense of the process for requesting and securing funds from TC Energy, and how at this point in time you see that working. Councillor Bartley has talked about, $3 million worth of work that potentially, for argument's sake, we'd like to undertake. How challenging do you see at this point the process to acquire the funds that we feel that we need?
I don't think challenging is the word. I think we will need to be able to demonstrate what the municipality is incurring costs for and why, and how it relates to the Ontario Pump Storage Project. If we can do that well, which we should be able to do well, because we shouldn't be asking for things that aren't one of those things, then I don't anticipate it being a challenge. I do anticipate there being a challenge if the municipality tries to obtain funds just to offset our costs in a general basis. But as long as we can show that, a certain percentage of the CAO's time and the project administrator and a visioning exercise and a trip to a pump storage plant and things are all things that are very much related to this project, I don't anticipate huge difficulties here. I think the thing on that, and I am 100% not speaking for TCE, because A, I never will, and B, they're not here to defend themselves. $3.5 million out of a $4.8 billion project, it's chump change. And I think we as a municipality need to remember that.
So in kind of wrapping up, I will certainly be supporting this because we are 180 degrees from where we were a couple of months ago, and have come a tremendous distance from where we were, a few months before that. In as much we are definitely, I think, turning the tide on things. We will have people on this steering committee who will have to square their feelings about the project with their responsibility to, get the facts and make rational decisions. The one question I have for you, Matt, is just simply, if this goes ahead in the foreseeable future and we have supply chain companies knocking on our door, asking where they could locate an office and a warehouse and maybe 75 employees, who do we refer to them to?
Me. In the short term, because I think any sort of development of any size in a community like this, that's the first point of call. I think I have a very talented team of staff, including our relatively new economic development coordinator who do that work with them. And I think our planning team would also say the same. But I think in the short term, whenever we're talking about big developments, whenever we're talking about significant new employment things, what these companies want to talk to is the mayor and the CAO first, because they want to find out what that community is about. They don't want to go to an economic development person generally.
I'm concerned about the fact that when they ask about where the service land is, you have to say, well, there's Owen Sound, there's Collingwood.
So I also don't think that's true, to be honest, Mr. Mayor. I think there is significant places in the municipality where there's service land already that could work for people, depending on their scale. I think there is lots of places where servicing can be put into in pretty quick turnaround if somebody is going to build something on private land that requires that servicing. We have many acres of land that is, a couple of 100 yards away from our major servicing that we have servicing plans for, and we could put pipe into the ground to those lands quicker than they could build a building to go on those lands. So I think there is enough there to be able to do that. I also think that, and this partly goes to my comment about not being ready for the serious multiple economic development people, is we don't know what this looks like yet. I've very specifically asked the team from TCE what sort of companies and supply chain organizations they think that are coming in here. And their answer really was, well, we're nearly at the stage where we're going to appoint a master procurement and contracting company, and then they'll be able to tell you that, not us, because they're engineering energy people, they're not, supply chain people. But what I am anticipating is that actually a lot of what the need will be things like office space and housing for people coming here. I very, very much doubt that we're going to have things being manufactured in the municipality for this project. But I can absolutely see people needing home bases, and I think there are places where that's possible already, and certainly places where if an organization like TCE wanted to put something together to allow companies to be based in some sort of business park, we absolutely have the land and the servicing to be able to do that.
Good, thank you. Are you ready to vote? All in favor? Thank you very much. So we move on now to, I believe, items for consideration. And we have two items here. The first is Infrastructure Ontario Borrowing Bylaw. The recommendation is, be it resolved that bylaw 2023-69, being a bylaw to approve the submission of an application to Ontario Infrastructure and Lands Corporation, OILC, for the long-term financing of certain capital works of the municipality of Meaford, and to authorize the entering into a rate offer letter agreement pursuant to which the municipality will issue debentures to OILC, be taken as read a first, second, and third time and finally passed. Need a mover and seconder, but Councillor Bell and Councillor Forder. Who's going to speak to that? Will it be you, Val? Go right ahead.
Through you, Mayor Kentner. These two were capital projects that we have spent and have completed over the last 3 years. 2021 was the Nelson Street Booster Station, and then the other one is the Cook Street reconstruction. In both cases, they were budgeted to be funded from reserve or from borrowing. So this is just to get that borrowing in place. If you have any questions.
Councillor Bartley.
Thank you, Mayor Kentner. A couple of questions. So like you said, these were done a couple of years ago. Why didn't we apply for a loan a couple of years ago when the interest rate was so much lower? Did you not know it was going up?
I did not.
No, but so they were done a couple of years ago. Do we always?
So we did not apply for a construction loan at the time. We funded that through ourselves. So currently they're sitting as unfinanced on our books.
I think the other bit to add to that is that both of these projects had small elements of them completed in 2023. So you don't want to borrow for a project that you haven't completed, because we need to finish it so we know exactly how much it's cost before we do the borrowing.
So they weren't done till 2023.
Not completed.
That answers that half of the question. So 62% of the payments are going to come from DC charges. Does that hurt our DC charges paying for our library? Or the DC charges that we definitely are going to need for a sewage plant?
In both of these cases, they're from the water. There is a portion that comes from the sewage part. The Nelson's or the Cook Street one, it's a shared one. So there'll be a part that's tax supported, sewage supported, and water. The booster one will all come from, and the booster one is the one that's covered by DCs, and that would be coming from the water portion of the DC charge.
So
Sorry, Councillor Barley. Just going to add that when we do development charges are split between different functions. So in a case like ours, it may be $8,000 for water, $7,000 for wastewater, $1,000 for the library, and so on. And each of those calculations are done based on the need for those individual projects. So no, the fact that we have to pay back the development charge debt for the water and wastewater side has no impact on the library or anything else, because they're different calculations and we're already collecting the money for these projects.
So can you tell me what the amount of the loan would be for both of these? And does that, we're hoping the DC charges will pay for that, or they will pay for that?
Through you, Mayor Kettner, we're hoping that the DCs will pay for that. So what happens is currently, I believe, the booster station, I think in our capital project, it was said to be approximately 77% covered by DCs. So currently it's estimated that the loan repayment for that on a yearly basis would be about 230,000, and a portion of that is DC covered and a portion of it is user pay. The other one, let me look that up. I think it's 77,000-ish that's going to be a repayment amount. And it would be covered, split between the three different areas: water, sewage, and roads. Percentage wise, probably 10% would be roads, and the other would be 50-50.
We are, of course, also updating our development charges study right now and expecting that to be with council in the very early part of next year. What we're able to do, because these projects, or the booster station in particular, was for growth for a long term, we can now take the final cost of that and include that cost in the DC study. And so the calculations that they make on the new water development charges rate will take into account this to make sure that it is covered over the course of the 25 years or so. What we can't do is guarantee that the development charges we collect next year will cover the payment next year, but the expectation would be that over the course of the life of the loan, we would cover those costs.
Okay, Councillor Greenfield.
Thanks, Mayor Kettner. I have two questions, if I may. Maybe I can break them up. The Nelson Street booster station. We had a hole in the ground near the top of Nelson Street Hill, where the booster station was. It got moved about 300 feet to the south across Nelson Street and relocated. I'm hoping there had to be much more to that project than just that. Nelson Street Hill was closed for 6-7 weeks or down to one lane, maybe closed completely. I know Miller Street Hill took quite a beating during the closure. Did we estimate almost $4 million for that booster station? Like that, even in today's world, seems like an awful lot of money. So did it come in on or near our budget? That's my first question.
Through your worship, it was definitely higher than expected. However, it was also during the inflation of COVID. So we were anticipating it to be over $2 million. So there was water main work that we did, as well as work at the water treatment plant. So it was quite a large project. Also the existing or the previous pump station, it had no backup pumps. We're now required to have, if one pump goes out, you have an additional pump in the stations to be able to complete the function of the station. There was no redundancy because the previous station was built in 1950, and there was serious issues with it that we were limping along, and thankfully it was providing enough pressure. However, most of the pressure that we require or design for is for fire flow. So maybe you wouldn't see the low pressures on a daily basis because the daily pressures required through those pump stations are quite low in comparison to what you're designing for. However, if there is ever a fire, you need to design for those pumping stations to be able to provide the pressure required to properly fight that fire. Luckily, in the past decades, as development has been in that area, we haven't seen any fires that were significant. And so luckily we were never had to test to see if that pump station could adequately provide that. Especially with more development coming, we recognize that that was no longer a capability. And so while we do model and make sure that we do provide what we need, that was definitely a lower pressure zone in our system under the old station. And so we now have provided the necessary pressures for now and into the future into that area. So while these projects are definitely getting more significant in cost, and as you can see with other costs we're seeing for similar types of projects. Luckily, we don't have a lot of them in comparison to some systems. But these assets are very costly. And COVID, unfortunately, really impacted these industries. We were expecting this project to be quite expensive, but it unfortunately was more expensive than what we were budgeting in 2019 and earlier.
Just to sort of complete the answer to that for Councillor Greenfield, the 2021 capital budget included $3,592,100, and that was the approved amount for this. So with the final cost being $3,752,160, it's around about $160,000 over budget, but on a budget of $3.5 million, that's not too bad, bearing in mind the construction increased costs that we saw. So yes, we did and council did approve around about these costs for these projects. It's not that this is significantly out of whack with what the approved budgets were.
And one more question.
Yes, okay, thanks for that, Victoria, and to you, Mr. Smith. Yeah, there's no doubt about it. The original pumping station was built for a municipality, for an urban area of about 3,200 people, and we have grown. The other side of the argument was that we had a heck of a lot more industry back in those days too. I do have another question, but I think maybe
I'll go back to Mr. Bartley. You've got another question then.
Thank you, Mayor Kentner. And financing. We took a loan out for the Meaford Hall at 6.5% or 6.25%, and we're all dreading that and regretting that. Now we're going for a 5%, and I understand the situation, but we're going for 15 years. Does it have to be a 15-year term? Because my crystal ball says it's going to drop at least 2% in the next year.
I don't know. I can go back and can inquire and we can hold it possibly as unfinanced for a couple months, but until after the year end. But you're gonna have to realize then on our year end, we're gonna show these huge amounts that are unfunded. And we normally want to try and have a balanced budget. That's why we're trying to fund them in the current year.
I think the other bit to that is that I'm sure we could do a 3-year loan and then try and refinance it afterwards. I'm equally sure that OILC would charge us a significantly higher interest rate to have a 3-year loan instead of a 15-year loan. So whether the balance over the end of it would be better, that very much is crystal ball territory. We absolutely could look at that, but I suspect in the short term it will be a lot more pain for some potential long-term gain, but not certain. I think just the bit I'll add to that in relation to all of these comments is that Val and I have spent a lot of time over the last couple of weeks talking about debt and talking about the impacts of debt on our budget. And obviously we do have a wastewater treatment plant conversation coming up pretty soon, which is going to have a significant impact on all of this. We as a municipality do need to use debt on occasions, and the wastewater treatment plant is a really, really good example of that. But I think when we are in a place of variable interest rates, we do need to be very, very careful about what it is that we're looking at in terms of projects and whether or not we should be using debt for things. When this one is significantly DC related, that is helpful because DCs can also take into account the interest that will be charged. So, you know, we should in the grand scheme of things come out at zero even after the interest on that 68% as well. And so, you know, for a growth related project, it does seem to make sense. But I think as we come up to budget both this year and in future years, we want to be very, very careful about the use of debt and whether or not it is the right idea for us at the right time. One last thing is that I think a lot of these are really, really, really good conversations to be having. My bid to you all, I think, is let's have them when we're budgeting for these projects, because by the time we get to this stage where we've already spent the $4.6 million, we've got to get the money somehow, and really this is our only option. So we've got to kind of move ahead.
And thank you, Matt and Val. I understand what we're up against. I really do. I hate debt. I hate debt. I know it's necessary at times. A 15-year debt at 5% scares me. Is there another way around that is what I was looking at. I've watched 2 other budget processes so far in the county. They're both increasing their debt a massive amount and using up as many reserves as they can. It's going to be a really tight budget year, and I understand debt. But a 15-year term of 5% is there a way around that? That's where I was going.
So I think on the use of debt, there are lots of people doing that. One of the conversations we are going to have when we get to the budget process for this year is, where do the debt payments come from? Do the debt payments come from increasing the operating budget accordingly? Or do they come from reducing the capital budget accordingly? Because reducing the capital budget doesn't help us because we still have our massive infrastructure backlog, as you know, but every time we take out debt and increase the operating budget to pay the debt, then that's having an impact on our tax increase and our tax rise. So there's going to be some interesting conversations about that coming up. I will look at Val as I say this because I don't know the dates. Is it possible, Val, if we defer this for 2 weeks to look at whether there's a short-term option? Or do we have to have this passed for OALC's purposes by this date?
I think their closing is December 15th, so I had to have it in. We might be able to hit next council meeting, but it'll be very close.
And another thought of mine was, I don't know where the money come out of, what reserve it come out of. Are we making 5% in that reserve? I doubt it. If we're not making 5%, why can't we finance it ourselves at 5%?
Because to fund something this large means we'd have to pull it from a lot of different reserves, and then you're locking yourself into not being able to use that money for a significant period of time.
You have one more question, Councillor Greenfield?
Yes, I did. Thank you. And thank you, Mr. Smith and Ms. Manning, for this information. Okay, we're applying for this money. I'm not sure we're guaranteed we're going to get this. I certainly hope we do. But anyway, we're talking $4 million in debt on this one. Valerie, do you have any idea how much more debt the 2024 budget might put in front of us? What we might be talking about during those deliberations?
Through you, Mayor Kentner, through our discussions, we're trying to avoid debt, any financing from debt next year at all. We're trying to use user pay, reserves, whatever, to cover anything. Now, having said that, we're kind of holding our debt because we have a sewage treatment plant that we're going to have to use debt for. The only issue I am going to bring up is our annual repayment limit will get very, very close to that amount because the amount of a sewage treatment plant is going to be pretty big.
Thank you.
Victoria?
Through your worship, just to add to that, because I am the one working on a fair amount of the capital projects, there are a couple of other small development charge related projects that would be funded through development charges. And if we don't have enough funds in those right now, those would go through debt as well. And so those are the only projects right now that are on the slate to have any debt related to them.
Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Your Worship. And just one final question, which I believe you did answer already, Mr. Smith, but the OILC is our only option for debt of this description. We never go to banks or any other institutions.
Through you, Mayor Kentner, to Deputy Mayor. I did actually inquire at the TD Bank as well. The rates were the same, and actually these were a little lower.
Would it make any sense to, just divvy it up some from reserves, like takes a smaller amount from reserves, but reduce the amount that we're borrowing? Because we are not really short on reserves at this point.
We are to a certain extent on the water and wastewater
Well,
side,
but
and
in
this would
general,
have
in
to
general.
be coming from that. I'm just trying to pull up the annual report on balances.
While Matt's doing that, if you look at the loan application, we have funded throughout the project. We have funded from DCs and reserves and a few other items. So we have been using reserves. This is the amount that we kind of budgeted that we were going to use from debt.
Okay. If you can find that, right.
So at the end of 2022, and obviously this doesn't take into account new ones, I will also try and find the spreadsheet that I think has a closer monitoring of it. The sewer reserve had 2,395,000 into account, and as Val says, we've taken some out of that, and the water reserve has 2,310,000. I think the bit that I would caveat transferring more from reserves for it is that I know that the projects that are being proposed for 2024 and 2025 also use quite a lot of reserves. And if we take it now, then we're just kind of kicking the debt can further down the road. Now, to Councillor Bartley's point of view, it may be that those interest rates are decreased within a year and a half or 2 years. And so that is a better situation. It may also not be.
Are you ready to vote on this? All in favor? And that is carried. Thank you. The next item, the recommendation be it resolved that bylaw 2023-70, being a bylaw to rezone a portion of the lands known as 245690 22nd Side Road to allow a temporary use for a motor vehicle repair facility for up to 3 years, be taken as read a first, second, and third time and finally passed. Need a mover and a seconder. It's moved by Councillor Greenfield, seconded by Councillor Forder. Does anyone want to speak to this at this point? Just questions. So Councillor Forder.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and through you, So my concerns relating to potential negative environmental impacts of a motor vehicle repair shop located in a specialty crop area. Considering that this land has the highest priority for protection, are staff certain that these concerns can be fully addressed through site plan control, and to what extent? What would that look like? And I also would like to know, just because I'm new to this and I haven't experienced this before, what is the level of harm permissible to specialty crop lands in relation to the businesses operating on them? Thank you.
Sorry, yes, Ms. McCarl.
Thank you, Your Worship. So, okay, so let's just flesh these out. So I think there's two questions. So the first one was, are staff certain that there'd be no environmental impacts to, say, the water course that was adjacent? Is that specifically? I can't be certain about that. So I think what we've suggested is that there'd be, I mean, the Conservation Authority hasn't had significant comments on this, so they don't seem to be too concerned. I haven't had any comments specifically about the water course related to Grey County either. And I think it's a great question. I think where we've suggested is that the likelihood of impact would be things like spills and that sort of thing. And so we are suggesting that from our staff perspective, that site plan control could be used to ensure that the location of cars and things like that are kept away from the water course, and that anything else that needs to take place to protect from spills and things like that would be included in that. And that also includes not having any car parts or derelict vehicles or anything like that on site, just actively being repaired cars. So the ones that are in queue for repairs only. Does that answer both of those questions?
Just to continue. So I'm coming to this through the lens that specialty crop areas require the highest level of protection. So that is more important than anything else, because these lands are very rare and they cannot be recreated if they are lost. So that's where I'm coming from, my primary concern. So with regards to site plan control and mitigating these things, going forward, how do we monitor and enforce this? Is this something where we just have to wait if there's a concern for somebody to call in a complaint to bylaw? With specialty crop lands, are there further standards in place with regards to measuring and making sure that these businesses are operating accordingly? Those are my main concerns, making sure that solvents and hazardous materials don't make their way into the ground.
Thank you again, Your Worship. So through you, a couple of things. One, I mean, we do outline a level of discomfort on this generally. It's not something that we normally see in a specialty crop area or on specialty agricultural lands. I think where we're suggesting that it could be considered is that there weren't any specific changes to the property. So I think if someone had come to us with just a farm and there were no buildings or anything like that, or maybe it's just cropped, or the farm buildings, there's the livestock operation or something like that, and they wanted to install a motor vehicle repair shop and there were changes to the property, one of the first things we would want to see is that no lands were taken out of production or anything like that. In this particular case, they're not proposing any changes to the property, so no lands would be taken out of production to create, say, a parking area or for buildings. And I think that's where, while the policies don't expressly prohibit the use, it's not been our understanding through all our training, through Meaford and the other ministry documents and our policies that we have, that this is the kind of use that we're supposed to be supporting on prime agricultural lands. In this case, though, because they're not proposing to change anything, just use the building as it is, I think that gives us a little bit more comfort that nothing should impact the specialty crop area. If they were actually, putting a building up right in the middle of the field or something, which sometimes does happen in proposals, that they propose putting a building in the middle of an improved agricultural area on the property, and that's not the case in this particular file. So I think that is where we were trying to balance the policies that we have with the proposal as it stands, just on face value, understanding that Yes, some cars were brought in on site that we weren't originally aware of, that weren't part of the proposal, and that we understand they are removing. And if those cars are removed and only the 25 cars, so the 15 cars for parking for staff and customers and the 10 vehicles in queue for repair, I think we can support it generally, knowing that this is a very specific case. It's not precedent setting. It's not something we want to generally support across all of this specialty crop area or anything like that. This was a very tough one for us to review because we're trying to strike a balance between those public interests and also the business, in this case, locating here because it was already here. So if this had come as just a proposal, we probably wouldn't be able to support it.
Go ahead. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you. So the application does not request vehicle storage or scrap, so vehicles would need to be removed. So what does that mean with regards to having a 10 vehicle limit? Does that mean those vehicles, like what does storage actually mean? Does that mean a vehicle in different states of disrepair could be there for what period of time? Or do those 10 vehicles need to be rotated out every single day? Like how it's not very clear. So I'm just looking for some clarification, please.
And thank you through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Forder. So I think I also didn't answer your other question. There's a lot of details in the question. So the question that you had asked previously, which I think this is part of as well, is how does it get monitored? Our bylaws services staff are actively monitoring this site now to get the property into compliance. In terms of the vehicles on site and the zoning in general. So because it's moving forward through this process, they're waiting to see what the answer is from council and the determination of this file, but also working with the property owner to get the vehicles that are on site that aren't being actively worked on or not part of their normal queue of car repair off the site, and anything that's not within that site plan area that we've shown in the sketch. Anything outside of that shouldn't be stored. So in terms of who would monitor like we're not going to go out daily and check to see that they're only, each car is moved since yesterday or anything like that. We understand that somebody's car may be inoperable and parts may be on order, and it's the same in any case that would happen. If we did notice that there were more than the 10 vehicles in queue because of a complaint, staff would follow up. So building services would follow up and do an inspection. There would be two tools that would be available to the municipality to enforce. One would be a site plan agreement, and the other one would be the zoning amendment that would be approved if council approves it. So we can use either of those tools to enforce the requirements that council is deemed appropriate.
Councillor Yuri.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Two words in this whole proposal that jump out are extenuating. Obviously, this circumstances create this, and I understand you're trying to work around it, and I appreciate that. The second one is temporary. Obviously, that's the big word. This is obviously a temporary solution. Do we have any visibility at all on the reality of how long it's going to take Johnny B's to get their original location back up and running? Through the insurance company, through Johnny himself, do we have any idea?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to the councillor's question, I have no idea. So I apologize, I don't have more information. Some of those things are probably moving targets for the property owners in question. So meaning that the temporary use location, probably they don't know how long Johnny's would be there. I'm sure that they'd love it to go very quickly in their new site. So I'm sure John's looking at this being a fast transfer, but unfortunately with the cleanup, insurance, new builds, our files and things like that, it'll really depend on the quality of the submission that we get, how fast they're able to do all their stuff, how fast they can build, materials, staffing for, the labor they need. So I really have no idea.
Councillor Greenfield.
Thanks, Mayor Ross. Obviously, I moved this recommendation for acceptance. I hope that does happen. I want John's business to continue, and I want it to progress, and I want it to flourish, especially when he gets back to his new location on Sykes Street North. However, I do hope that there will be some buy-in. The municipality is, we're stretching the limits on this one. So I really encourage Mr. Bolsink to, there are rules that have been pointed out, and I really hope that that he will do his very best to follow the rules. I was out by the property this morning, and I'm pretty sure there were over 20 vehicles on there, which is fine. That's within limits. I guess I do have a question to Ms. McCarroll. Reading the report, it does seem a little delicate, a little vulnerable. There is a 30-day appeal period. In your opinion, if this is challenged, obviously we have to defend our decision. And do you feel confident that we can do that?
I don't know if I can answer that question. I'd almost look to the CAO maybe to provide some clarity there. I don't have a crystal ball. So I'm not sure if anyone's considering an appeal on either side. So I don't know if the applicant's thinking if this isn't approved that they would appeal, or that the folks that haven't supported this, the residents in the area, for example, are considering that. In each case, one of the parties would also have to have a planning opinion. So, that's just something to keep in mind. So they would have to hire someone to provide a planning opinion to support that appeal.
Matt, would you like to speak?
That was the most delicate buck passing I think I've ever seen. I think actually Denise, following attempts to pass buck, probably answered it in the same way that I will, is that if there is an appeal, we will as a council have to consider how we wish to move ahead. And in the past, councils in locations have vigorously defended decisions, have also just let appeals go forward with what's on paper in front of them, and chosen to sort of leave this between the people involved on the ground. I think if there is an appeal, we will bring that back to council, and we'll have a conversation there about how best to move forward.
Anyone else that wish to speak? Yes, Councillor Bartley.
Thank you, Mayor Kentner. Now, I really feel for the Wilcoxes and the neighbors. My neighborhood has been opened up to a bunch of rhetoric also, and it's not good. But I do have to support this going forward. And I hope that the Bolshanks can adhere to bylaw issues, because the county is nervous about this. The municipality's nervous. Grace Sobel is nervous, but under special circumstances to help Johnny out, we're moving ahead with this. And I hope he can adhere to the issues. So like I said, I will support it, but I think what this here council and this here staff has to do is do everything we can possible to make sure it's not 3 years. It's a shorter time, and we can get the new business open. So I hope we can rally together and get that done. Thank you.
Councillor Bell.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So if council today votes in favor of this, and there's a 30-day appeal period, should the 30-day period pass with nobody filing, on the decision. How soon would Johnny be able to be an accredited motor vehicle inspection station? After the 30-day period, the very next morning? When?
So, through you, Mr. Mayor, I think the question is because of the fact that motor vehicle inspection stations and also repair shops that do safety checks and things like that have requirements from the ministry. And so what we'd be looking at is, when is the zoning in effect? So the zoning is in effect following a 20-day appeal period after the notice of decision is posted. So I usually try to get that notice of decision as soon as I'm given a copy of the written or the signed bylaw, so that I can really feel confident that it got signed. And usually a couple of days after the meeting, or within that week. And then if we add that on to the next 20 days, the municipality would be in a position that we could write a letter, a zoning compliance letter, saying that the zoning was in place for that use, if that answers the question.
I think the second half to that question is how long it takes after that is entirely down to the Ministry of Transportation. We can only say this is now a permitted use, and after that, I don't know how long that process would normally take, or whether there's an expedited version in these sorts of circumstances, but it would be over to them to process it.
Oh, sorry, Councillor Forder.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. In this report, the proposed hours of operation are 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. Is that 7 days a week? It doesn't provide a lot of clarity on that. I'd just like to know exactly what the permitted hours of operation would be, because I don't think it should be 8 to 6, 7 days a week. As a courtesy to our neighbors, their neighbors, they should get a little bit of a break as well.
So through you, Mr. Mayor, to the councillor's question. So I think the noise bylaw, for example, has hours of operation for this type of, that we handle something like this, but the actual proposal is seeking to limit that further. So I believe it's 8 to 8. I don't know if Matt knows the answer. I believe that is the normal operational hours in the noise bylaw or something like that. The application is proposing it to actually be 8 to 6. And I believe there may be some limiting hours on the weekend. We can include that in the site plan agreement. We can't really do that in the zoning bylaw itself, but we're prepared to put limiting hours in the site plan agreement, just so that we all have that clarity, if that makes sense.
Anyone else wish to speak? Okay, thank you very much for your help on that, Denise. So just before we call the question, I think I'd like to speak to the neighbors and thank you for your forbearance. And because I think you have not ruled this out entirely, I think you've been very fair. And Johnny, you've been through a whole lot, and it's been very difficult, but the community values your family and your services. And we have an opportunity here to get past a very difficult period, but it is going to take a lot of cooperation and effort on your part, Johnny, to make sure this works for everybody. And I hope that I believe we're going to pass this in good faith. And I hope that first of all, I hope to see you in business on Sykes Street a lot sooner than 3 years, for everybody's sake, and that we're able to do this without a lot of difficulties for those who are your neighbors in your new location, temporary location. I'm going to call the question. All in favor? And that is passed. Thank you very much. I need a motion to move in committee of the whole, unless you want a break. Do you want to take a short recess? Let's do that. Back, say, in 10 minutes. Thank you. Okay, we're back in session. Thank you, everyone. The next item on the agenda is item A in committee of the whole. We did move into committee of the whole, or we didn't? We did not. Then we need to move into committee of the whole. I need a mover and a seconder. It's Tony Bell and Councillor Forder. And moving into the first item here, it is additional residential units zoning update. The recommendation that committee of the whole receive report development 2023-25 for information purposes. And maybe somebody wants to give a little explanation of this. Maybe you, Denise. It's a bit.
Thank you, Your Worship. So the purpose of this report is just to give everyone, including council, a heads up. So anyone who's checking out our agendas and looking at our packages will have a heads up about this ahead of time. We've been promising folks that this is coming forward because we get a lot of minor variances and people get stuck not being able to get a building permit for what we call them ADUs. I think we're probably going to call them ARUs because of the way that the Planning Act legislation wording is. But either way, I think we all know what these are. These are the accessory apartments or the second and third units that are now permitted under the Planning Act. So the third unit, which was codified last year through Bill 23. We had two issues that we wanted to bring forward in this update. One was just to make sure that we have clarity around the legislation that we have, being that we don't have provisions for a third unit, but they are enacted in the Planning Act. So people can put a third unit in their home. We want to have regulations for those on where they can be. And the second is to make them a little bit easier to put in, because right now, and I've given you example, and you can probably see if you took a look at those zoning provisions, it's actually a little bit of a flip back and forth through different sections trying to figure out what you have to do. And we want to make that a little bit easier. So there's a couple of different ways we're going to do that, just maybe by cleaning up some of the language and also creating a bit more of a how-to guide on our website for that. That's separate from this particular issue. But we also get a lot of minor variances, as I've mentioned. People are asking for relief from the 2 bedrooms, from the size limits, because it's only allowed to be 50% of the size of the main unit. They're asking for taller than a single story building or taller than 4.5 meters in the urban area. They're asking for all kinds of relief. And it makes sense to me why that would happen. If you picture an example, if somebody has a 1,200 square foot bungalow and they want to put in a basement apartment, they're only allowed to put it a 2-bedroom, 600 square foot apartment because of the way that the rules are. And I think given that we already allow people to have duplexes on most of the residential zones, we want to make it easier. So just to go through what Bill 23 allows, it allows anybody who has a residential property in an urban area, so a serviced urban area, to put 3 units on their property. So they're either allowed to put in a triplex, turn their building into a triplex, or they're allowed to duplex their apartment, or their house, so they can have a basement apartment or 2 units in the main house and an accessory building with a unit in there. Or they're allowed to have a main building with 2 accessory units. So think of like 2 tiny homes, but I mean, I want to have a broader understanding of it than the tiny home idea, because they don't have to be necessarily that small. But right now we only allow basically what I've given you in the zoning bylaw. And so we just need to be able to provide some more clarity around what's permitted, and maybe bring it out to the public just to do a little bit of a public education campaign on this as part of the zoning amendment, to let them know that this is permitted in their thoughts. So one of the things that could be considered would be allowing a 2-story accessory building, or 1.5-story, maybe making no limits on the size like we have now. So people could have 3-bedroom apartment or a 3-bedroom unit, or more than that. Maybe it doesn't have to be 50% of the size of the main dwelling. Those are the sorts of things that we want to make easier, so people can put these in their homes without as much of a struggle. Like I said, the example of the bungalow, that one is a real example that happens all the time, because folks are being told, well, you can have that second apartment, but you can only have it this way. And then they have a portion of their home they have to use for something else, like storage, when it doesn't really make a lot of sense. So that's generally the basis of this. And we just wanted to make sure council was well aware of what we're planning to bring forward and in advance, so that when we put out the notice, no one is shocked by that. But it is something we have to do. We really don't have a choice. And then we just wanted to be able to tag onto that to do maybe an even better job of what we are doing now. And I've just outlined, we've had a few people put these in, but the majority of them are in the rural area. And that could be because of a variety of reasons, because we don't have a survey of what necessarily that showed why did they put this ADU in the rural area. Most of the people that I've spoken to over the last almost 10 years that we've been doing them everywhere else and here in all the places I've worked are doing this for family members. So it may be that in the rural area, there's family members that folks are trying to accommodate on their property to help out with their farming, or maybe they have more room to put in the accessory unit, which is probably the case. Where it's much harder to put one of these into an urban area, especially if it's in the backyard. It's hard to fit this in. So we want to make it easier for folks, because I think it's an easy way, if people want to do it, to get more housing and affordable housing into our municipality. I think that's why, that we know that's why the government enabled it to begin with, but and especially the third unit that they did last year. So that's the basis of the report. It's probably longer than I needed to go on about it, but I just wanted to make it really clear that there's kind of a twofold approach here. One, just to get us and make sure that we're meeting our obligations under Bill 23 and making sure that it's codified in our zoning that you can have this third unit. And secondly, to do a better job of promoting and regulating the 3 units than we do now. Maybe not as restrictive, but it is something that needs to go to the public for some public input, even though there are no appeal rights on any bylaws that council passes in this regard. So once you pass it, you don't have to worry about any appeals on that. It will be you putting forward what you believe is in the best interest of the community and passing that. Unfortunately, because this will have to go in the newspaper, we've realized there's no way to get it in the newspaper in time for the next public meeting date that's on council's agenda right now for December. So we may be looking at the new year before we're able to have the public meeting for this. That wasn't what I was hoping for, but as I think we're only 3 weeks away from that date now, and we tried to get it in the newspaper, but it was just not enough time because of the fact that it does need to go in the newspaper because it's not going on a property.
Thank you, Denise. Any questions for her? Councillor Forder?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a comment, and Denise, thank you very much for that explanation. So as we're going to next on the agenda, the building report, it does say that there's a decrease in permits issued for accessory apartments last year versus this year. So I am hoping that these changes do make it simpler and encourage residents to do this, so we could provide more housing options in the municipality. So I just wanted to thank you for that.
Deputy Mayor Keaveney?
Thank you very much, Your Worship. And Denise, I really appreciate all the information you provided in relation to this report. And I agree with you. I think this is an opportunity to provide additional housing stock and potentially some affordable units for Meaford. I think it is unfortunate, and probably for all the reasons you've mentioned, that we haven't had a more significant uptick in taking advantage of this opportunity to add an additional dwelling unit to properties. And I'm wondering what your thoughts are in terms of incentives to encourage people to do this going forward, whether there's anything we might or consider adding to our CIP process, or perhaps eliminating DCs on these extra units or properties, or what do you know that other communities are doing to encourage more of these builds?
Thank you for that question. So through you, Mr. Mayor, to the question the Deputy Mayor is asking. There's a couple of different things. So first off, I don't believe DCs are collectible on these accessory dwelling units. So they're already exempt from those. But folks may not know that. So we may be able to do a better job of promoting that fact that there isn't as much rigmarole to put one of these in, especially that there isn't as much to do under building code, things like that, in your home. So if you're putting in a basement apartment or you're splitting your house into 2 units, it's a little bit easier than if you're putting 3 or 4 units or turning your house into an apartment building. The bar is different, and it's to make it easier. So we could be more explicit with our how to put in an accessory apartment, or how to put in an ADU in your house, or in municipality. I know that's what other municipalities are doing, and we had a summer student this summer who reviewed as many municipalities as possible for what they're doing. A lot of them have a how-to guide. And what that does is help with the rules that we have, and it marries that with the building code aspects as well. So folks know how to navigate that process, because I would imagine a number of folks have never even done a construction project. So they need a little bit of help there. In terms of incentives, some municipalities are doing some significant financial incentives, but they're usually done with they're a carrot, but they have some requirements of it. So for example, in the county of Simcoe, I believe the county provides a grant they provide a forgivable loan, but you have to maintain that unit for at least 10 years as an affordable unit. And at that point, then you would get forgiveness on that loan. Those are the kinds of things we could do. But I think through your point about the CIP, that is an opportunity, since we already have that document. I'm actually not sure if it provides anything now, because I know it does have a few things in there, but something like the building permit fees, or hopefully we don't need minor variances in the future on these, because hopefully we're permissive enough, but should there need to be planning application that someone has to go through, those are the kinds of fees that the CIP has historically allowed, or what it has been set up for, to provide forgiveness on once those units are put in. And I don't know if council's thinking about any other kinds of incentives at this point. But that's the ones I can think of off the top of my head.
Thank you. Councillor Urick.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Totally agree with all of this. It sounds like a great idea to get more infrastructure in place. Question is, how does this impact services? So right now our services obviously go to the property, and now all of a sudden there's going to be 2 more homes on that. How does that play against the wastewater and our plants versus plus? How is that responsibility being doled out to the billing and all of it that's related to services?
So I'm gonna pass this over, but I do want to say that if nowhere else I've worked or spoken with has had so many of these that they've made any difference in their capacity, unless they were literally at the end of the line. So I doubt it will make any difference, but I'll pass it over to. I wish that was the problem. Oh, there's so many. There's a big rush on ADUs, so now we have no sewer capacity. That would be fantastic.
Through your worship, we do account in our future forecasting for units connected to the system for some infill. that could consist of adding an additional unit on a property. But as was mentioned, it is quite minimal what we're currently accounting for. We don't see a lot, and also it doesn't have a significant amount of impact that we're seeing, but yes, every unit does count. And so we do take some into consideration for sure. When they come online, the units that we have connected to the system are identified through our billing. So we would be picking those up every time one is added to the system. So we do take those into consideration as well.
Councillor Bell.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. So just a couple of comments on this. When we first had the subject about affordable housing, I think council can remember that I put forward that the municipality of Meaford would promote the minimum standards of the Ontario Building Code. So if we look here where it says that there's no minimum floor area of a residential unit, that's quite an impactful statement, because there's no minimum floor area, and yet there are in the building code. What is a 3-piece bath? There's a size. What is a single bedroom? There's a size. So that's a major comment just on that one line. And to what was just mentioned a moment ago, stepping outside of the town of Meaford itself, when folks out in the rural community want to do a change, their septic systems are looked at. And in every case that I've been involved with, they've been required to put in a larger septic system. And when we look at the upcoming report, that generally happens because they're talking about the capacity of the people that are on the inside of the dwelling. And so that is maybe in the rural community more of an impactful portion to this. Thanks.
Any more comments, questions? You ready to vote? All in favor? And that is carried. We'll look forward to the next move on that. The building report, it's here, and I think I'm going to call on Councillor Greenfield to analyze it for us.
Thank you, Your Worship. This is the report until the end of October, provided by Mr. Toby. Thank him for that. After 10 months, we are very close to $61 million worth of building permits for 2023, and that is very close to the total we had all of last year. So it's seems very possible that we will surpass that number from last year. 43 new homes, and that's I think 7 or 8 greater than at this time in 2022. Also a couple of interesting numbers. The agricultural buildings, over $5.5 million in permits there, and I think that's very important in our municipality. It's great to have this blend of certainly residential, but also ag buildings. And another impressive number is over $4 million in commercial renovations. That's got to be a good sign. So all in all, Mr. Mayor, I think a very satisfactory building report, and we're hoping for even bigger numbers by the end of the year.
Anyone else have a comment? Tony?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I have had questions on the presentation of this in the past, and I've got that answer before. So this one has to do with the accumulated values, and I'm just going to choose the sewage systems. Okay. So we have year to date, there's 2023, 44 million 6. You follow the line across, and then at the top it says the month of October, that we have none listed there, but you project over, you got 244,000. So I'm just missing the gap between putting in 244,000, but not one issue permit. I don't get it.
And I'm not sure we have anybody here.
I don't know the answer to that. I will follow up, and if there's an update needed, I'll send it to you.
Okay, thank you for the community meeting calendar. We're all going to be busy in the coming year. Updates from members appointed to county council. Deputy Mayor, do you have a report from county council?
I do, Your Worship. Thank you very much. County Council met last Thursday, November the 9th. After the customary singing of O Canada, Warden Milne called for a moment of silence in recognition of Remembrance Day. Minutes of prior meetings were approved and 2 bylaws were passed. The first to reappoint Principals Integrity as our Integrity Commissioner, and the second to authorize an easement for Durham Stone and Paving. Moving into Committee of the Whole, there were 4 items on the consent agenda, which were all approved without comment. The first was correspondence relating to continued opposition to the Grey Road 19 roundabout and road expansion from the residents of the nearby Windfall development. They've had, I believe, over 600 signatures on a petition. The second was correspondence from the Western Wardens Caucus stating their desire to revoke existing strong mayor powers and not to implement legislation that transfers legislative responsibility from the body of council to the head of council. The third, in a letter to the Minister of Energy, Mr. Todd Smith, the Western Wardens Caucus states, on October the 13th, 2023, the WOWC passed a resolution in favor of the Government Ontario updating the LTC cost threshold from 2 million to 20 million for hydrocarbon lines. And they would do this through amending the Ontario regulation while maintaining current requirements and expectations for Indigenous consultation and environmental review for projects greater than $2 million and less than $10 million. Please don't ask me a question on all that. And number 4, the minutes from the Agricultural Advisory Committee were adopted. Grey County staff commented on Bill 134, which is the Affordable Homes and Good Jobs Act. And that act included a new provincial definition for affordable housing, which is rent is no greater than the lesser of 30% of the annual income of a household at the 60th percentile in the applicable local municipality, or average market rent as set out by the MMAH in the Affordable Units Rental Bulletin. Based on 2022 data, the affordable purchase price of a home in Grey County is $357,000 and an affordable rent is $1,460 a month. Those are pretty valuable numbers. Variability is constant in the market, but this gives us an approximate number to work with. No definition for attainable was provided by the province. County staff stated their preference would be to offer development charge exemptions to for purpose-built affordable rental units only, not attainable housing or affordable units to purchase as was recommended by the province. Affordable rental units must remain affordable for 25 years or the exemption would be null and void and DC charges would then have to be paid. Official Plan Amendment 18 requested support for an on-farm diversified use on an undersized lot in Southgate that would include a shop, power room, skid steer room, outdoor storage, and a gravel yard to complement the existing coverall barn, which is used to house meat goats. OFDUs do not have to be specific to agriculture, which was interesting. Their purpose is to provide additional income for farms to make farm operations viable. County Council again discussed the 2024 budget. The starting point on Thursday the 9th was 12.14%. Staff incorporated recommendations from the closed session we had prior to that, which brought the suggested tax levy increase to 10.07%. Council deliberated a long list of options as provided by staff for possible further reductions, including everything from eliminating the 1% standing commitment for affordable housing to cutting service awards for Grey County staff, and significant items as potential changes to the Grey County transit route were also discussed. They even talked about removing the percentage that allows for the purchase of fresh foods in our long-term care homes. So really, we're absolutely talking about every possible opportunity to cut the tax levy at the county. In the end, most members felt they couldn't make difficult decisions on these matters without seeing the entire draft budget. So we punted this forward, and the draft budget will be published on December the 1st, and council will next deliberate the budget on December the 8th. And at the close of the meeting, CAO Wingrove discussed potential delegations for Roma. Currently, those include the Minister of Health to request funding for supportive housing in Owen Sound, particularly at 14th Street and a new project there. They will also discuss funding for Rockwood Terrace. That's the $96.7 million project that's being built in Durham, and we really need some support from the province on that one. There'll be a delegation to the Minister of Transportation requesting funding to be able to continue the Grey Transit route, and also to the Minister of Education to talk about surplus school properties and the potential of those in relation to housing. So over to you, Your Worship, if there was anything you wanted to add.
I think that's a very comprehensive report, and it's going to be one tough budget, I'll tell you. I certainly hope that our Meaford budget does not start over 12%. Pardon me. Are there any other updates on boards or committees? Okay, Councillor Greenfield.
Your Worship, I do have an abbreviated report from the Meaford Public Library board, certainly abbreviated compared to what my good friend Mr. Ford always delivers. I do have a question of the Deputy Mayor, if on me. That affordability, housing affordability, was it 357,000? Was that the affordable price of a house for a certain income group?
If I may respond, Your Worship.
Sure.
Yes. So if we come back to the definition of an affordable unit as prescribed by the province being no greater than the lesser of 30% of the annual income of a household. And if we work with that number and the average income of a resident in Grey County, that would equate to an affordable purchase price of $357,000. So it's sort of a ballpark number to work with, and we've never really had that number before as kind of a target. So yeah, that's how that was calculated, if that's helpful.
Okay, well, thank you for that. That's very interesting. I just received an email, I think a few days ago, from a realtor in Grey County that said the average selling price of a home in Grey County last month was $773,000. Quite a discrepancy. If I may, briefly on the library, we did meet, the board met on last Wednesday. A couple of Owen Sound North Grey Union library items, the services agreement draft. Our library board agreed to extend that until the end of 2026. And of course, that is for the benefit of all library users in our municipality. The library contract this year with Owen Sound North Grey will be $146,637, $146,000 for this year's contract. We got our monthly or our variance report, which comes through every board meeting. Everything looks to be in order thus far as of the end of October, and we did a budget review for 2024. I think the library board is pretty well established next year's budget. It's I think quite reasonable. We've had a few increases, but I think if the municipality can come in with similar numbers the library board has, that we'll be in reasonably good shape for it. Thank you.
Thank you. So I need a motion to move out of committee of the whole. So moved by Councillor Bartley, seconded by the deputy mayor. And that is at 3:40 this afternoon. Now moving on to councillor motions. Are there any notices of motion today? Councillor Yuri.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, I'm planning to bring a motion to put at least one, if not two, event signs, one on the either side of urban Meaford. I did talk with the Collingwood municipality about how they organize theirs. Pleased to say it's extremely popular. They can put two events up there, as people will obviously see when they drive in Highway 26. It's booked out a year in advance, and it is not a budget item because they actually work with a printing company that ends up doing the installation and the printing for it. That's kind of the how they manage to do it financially, because that company actually manages that, but they have to get permission for the events from the municipality. So it's not even really a budget item. This will also tie into a little bit with what Mr. Greenfield is going to be bringing short with the sesquicentennial. A lot of the complaints that a lot of people that put on events in our community are, a lot of people don't, if they don't follow newspapers, social media, radio, not everybody follows all those things. Yet we have a lot of traffic on those roads coming in and out of the town. So that would be a great visible vehicle for us to use to do that. The last thing is it'll eliminate, hopefully, the possibility of putting up poles and banners, which are more labor intensive to change out, and you can only put up one thing at a time. So there's a lot of advantages potentially to doing this kind of signage that we could then advertise next year's sesquicentennial events coming up on, and and promote a lot of things that are happening in our community.
Thank you, Councillor. We do have a couple of motions for decision today, and the first one is Councillor Greenfield. Do you want to read your motion?
Whereas the council of the municipality Meaford decided to recognize the 150th anniversary of the foundation of the town, the continuing events and celebrations, and whereas council of the organization and organizing its activities and the response to therefore, be it resolved that the council of Meaford during the 2024 budget resolution dedicated funding of $25,000 to assist with the annual recognition. And I'll move that.
Yes, is there a seconder for that? Councillor Forder. Discussion. Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Your Worship, and I want to thank Councillor Greenfield for bringing this motion forward. And I would like to suggest an amendment, if I may.
Hey.
What I'd like to suggest is removing the third paragraph of the motion as presented with the mover's permission, and replace it with the following. Whereas it will be necessary for the municipality to receipt sponsorships and assist with some events during the sesquicentennial. Therefore, be it resolved that a member of our events and communications staff be available to book steering committee meetings and provide minutes, and that during its 2024 budget deliberations, council dedicate funding of $25,000 to assist with the anniversary recognition. So I would move that amendment.
Is there a seconder for that amendment? Councillor Yuri. So discussion. Councillor Bartley.
Thank you, Mayor Kentner. I have no issues with supplying $25,000 in funding. I really don't want to put it in the budget process as a taxation coming out of the levy. I believe there's got to be some sort of reserve somewhere we could pull $25,000 out of and not get it involved in the budget process.
That would probably be a matter for the budget discussions, but did you wish to comment, Matt?
I was actually just going to say very similar. I think if council passes this, we'll put it in the budget to be funded from the tax levies. It doesn't say anything any different. And then council can obviously make changes at that time. But if you want to make a change now, then we can take further direction.
What I would like to let people know around the Horseshoe is that at the last organizational meeting last week, the people involved in selling sponsorships said they would endeavor to match the $25,000 that the municipality puts forward with $25,000 in sponsorship money, which was a good sign, I thought. Go ahead, Councillor.
Yeah, and I agree with that. And like I said, I'm not arguing the $25,000. I think this is a well worth, where I can't pronounce it, so I'm not going to try. This is a well worth thing. I just, every week we have come up with 25,000 here and 50,000 there. We're adding to the budget every week, and I can see it climbing. And we've got $20 million in reserves. We could find $25,000 and put it forth right now. Thank you.
Councillor Greenfield.
Your worship. Thanks, Deputy Mayor Keaveney and Councillor Urick, for your suggestion. It's a great amendment in my estimation. I do want to bring forward just a bit of a review of the meeting last Tuesday evening. We had a relatively small number of residents come out, but a very energetic, ambitious group that did come forward with some great ideas. Just I was overwhelmed. I was amazed. I think one thing I did take away from the meeting was that, and I believe it's council's responsibility to do this, is during these anniversary celebrations, I think there are going to be two aspects to them. One is promotion of the municipality and perhaps in particular the town, promotion and marketing, that aspect to the celebrations. To me, the other aspect is exemplifying the history of our town, the harbor, the importance of the harbor, the fishing, the railroad at the harbor, the shipping, the fact that we had the two very best hardwood flooring plants, arguably in the entire country, in our town. The fact that at one time we had, and I haven't really confirmed the numbers, 5 or 6 downtown grocery stores, 8 or 9 downtown hotels. These are the type of things that I want to have included. So yes, I want present day promotion, economic development type promotion for the future for the town, but I do want to ensure that the history, the past history is prevalent in these celebrations. And to be quite honest with you, I'm not exactly sure how you intermingle them both. So if any council members have any suggestions or ideas, I'd certainly be open to accepting them.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Bartley.
Thank you, Mayor Kenton. And one last comment. Our budget process hasn't even started. We could finish in March. So now somebody's going to help match our comment, our 25,000, and we're not given the okay till March. Next thing, and it's June. I think you're leaving it way too late. I really do. I think it should be on the table now.
That is the budget for this. The 25,000.
I said, take it out of the budget process. That's going to be March before you're done. Could be March if I can delay it long enough.
We need an amendment from you then.
So I would think
But we
And you
need to,
you can vote on it, that we should, put the money up now out of some sort of reserve. I know there's enough out there, and that should happen now, not in March.
so, can we amend the amendment?
You can amend an amendment, yes. I'm just trying to look at some options for funding. I think that probably the one that makes the most sense, that has some money in it, is probably either recreation. I think it's probably recreation, because the museum reserve is very much for the collection at the museum, and this isn't really that. But at the end of 2022, the recreation reserve had 178,000 in it. We may have taken a little bit out of that for some of the capital projects, potentially. I think the wood chips, perhaps, but I think there is money in there. That's the only one that seems to make sense to me as I look at this list quickly. So the amendment to the amendment would be that instead of during its 2024 budget deliberation, council dedicate funding of $25,000 to assist with the anniversary recognition, it will be that council hereby allocate $25,000 drawn from the recreation reserve to fund the sesquicentennial celebrations.
Sounds good. Does anybody have that all captured, that we can just read the resolution as it stands then?
So it would mean, I'll try and look in 3 different places at once. So whereas the Council of the Municipality of Meaford has decided to recognise the 150th anniversary of the founding of the town of Meaford through sesquicentennial events and celebrations, whereas Council has reached out to organisations and individuals to bring forward ideas for activities, and the response has been positive, and whereas it will be necessary for the municipality to receive sponsorships and assist with some events during the sesquicentennial, therefore be it resolved that Council of the Municipality of Meaford allocate a member of our events or communications staff to be available to book steering committee meetings and provide minutes, and that Council allocate $25,000 from the recreation reserve to assist with the anniversary celebrations. I think that covers everything.
So is that, we can just proceed and vote on that?
No, we would need to vote on the amendment to the amendment, then vote on the amendment, then vote on the real one. And that's the sort of thing I will be paying about so that we get it right. Just before we do, if you don't mind, Mr. Mayor, I just want to add a couple of bits to this. I just, firstly, as a question back to council, because I don't know whether this was discussed at the last meeting with the community groups, is how would this $25,000 be spent? What would our sort of oversight be in terms of, you know, is it somebody's just running off and buying fireworks, for instance, or is there a plan? The other is on the staffing side. You're not going to be surprised to hear me say that we don't have a lot of people with a huge amount of spare time, and we could absolutely find somebody to book meetings and provide minutes of meetings, assuming those meetings aren't weekly. But my concern would be that that would turn into the groups very much requesting that our staff were doing things. And I think if that's going to be the case, then we need to be really clear on that, because we'll have to either pay for some additional resource or stop doing some things that we are currently doing.
So we will try and police that, those of us who are on the committee. There's something I wanted to respond to of what you said there, but go ahead.
I'll read you what's going out after this meeting, because we were waiting to hear whether or not there would be a budgeted amount and whether there would be a designated staff member. We also so just what it says here literally is council also requested that a municipal events communication staff member be assigned to keep track of the financial aspects of the committee, including charitable donation and sponsorship receiving, book the meetings, provide minutes, and coordinate with staff on items requiring municipal participation or coordination. So it came down to that, yes, the sponsorship aspect of the committee, the subcommittee that's going to be doing sponsorships, the matching was to come up with that $25,000. It was more concerned about getting the receiving capabilities through a staff member, and it was less to make it onerous on a staff member than it was to have somebody in the room who actually can be a voice. Because what we actually experienced at that meeting was, so now you have all the great conversations. Now we got to go back and get a staff member to talk about this too and do something about it. So we want the person in the room that will actually be able to say at that time, yes, the municipality can or cannot do that based on their experience, and then take it back and get it done by the person that's needs to be done if it's affiliated with the municipality. So that is to your answer about the staff member. It's not as much of them doing everything. It's answering for the municipality in terms of what they're going to be doing.
That's fine. I'm just bringing it up because just to put the full context on it that I should have said earlier. What council's last resolution was ask other groups to make their events into sesquicentennial events.
And
My
that's
impression from what I'm hearing is this has become, we'll also do additional events.
Well, yeah, I think it is both happening as we planned, but there's a fair amount of enthusiasm, and I think it's gathering momentum. What I wanted to draw to your attention is the $25,000, largely for at least seed the acquisition of apparel, logoed apparel, which is going to be really hopefully supply the municipality with some swag that it doesn't have at this point in time, at really without any budget, like except for what they're doing here.
I would actually say then that isn't what you're doing here. If it's just to seed money to get things to sell that we'd make a profit on, then we don't need to allocate money to it. We can just do that because that's just an in and out carry cost. If you're doing this is to spend $25,000 that will not come back.
This is certainly planned the money will come back from it, yes. And but for example, one of the issues that they wanted was to see if it is possible to get a better price using the municipality's supplier of apparel.
Yeah, so I mean, we can certainly look at all of that, but again, if it's just to invest in inventory, we carry inventory on all sorts of things at all times, so we can just make a purchase and then it can be retailed back out, and then the money would have to come back to us. That's not asking for that. Doesn't need funding of $25,000 to do that, because that would literally be saying you can spend $25,000 on stuff that will not come back.
There will likely be a need for some budget. I was going to say at an upscale rate of $25,000 contribution, but everything that we've talked about has been selling this for more than we pay for it, and that would help finance the entire operation, and it could well be that there's proceeds to return to the municipality.
Which makes sense, but then what I'm saying is that we don't have to pass a resolution to say dedicate $25,000 to it, because that is coming out of taxpayer money and not coming back.
Councillor Urick?
So in concert with that, and just to make it clear, it's not all about the apparel, because there is so yes, there are all the local organizations that are involved are definitely going to somehow conceptualize and tie in the sesquicentennial into their events. So that's the grand scheme. However, there is a portion of this that the municipality is doing as well, because Canada Day itself will be kind of part of the sesquicentennial as well. So the staff member we need as well is coordinating when people want to do events, organizations want to do something and they need permissions from the municipality, then that staff member is going to be on point on that. But as well, we need an events coordinator that's literally going to tie in, like we did in Canada Day last year. Who's going to organize that for the municipality? Because the organizations are not going to organize Meaford's contribution to the sesquicentennial. So that there was a budget amount like last year of like $15,000, something like that. So again, part of that money is to as well do what the municipality is going to do.
So I think again, that's what I'm trying to clarify here, because we have a Canada Day budget and we have an employee who's dedicated to approve, well, not dedicated, part of her role is to approve events from third parties and to organize the municipality's Canada Day activities. So that already exists. If council wants the municipality's Canada Day budget to be bigger, that's not this. That's dealing with our Canada Day budget at budget time, because if we dedicate this without being very specific that it's for Canada Day, then it's going off into the world and it's not necessarily focused on our events. The bit that I wanted to clarify about our staff members' time is exactly that. When council had talked about it before, and again, council can do whatever they want, but we just need to all be on the same page so that my team know what they're supposed to be doing. When we talked about it before, it was that the municipality wouldn't do anything additional other than Canada Day being themed around sesquicentennial things. If we're now saying that we want Canada Day to be bigger, we could budget for that in the Canada Day thing, and then we need to acknowledge that will take more time and effort. If we're saying that the other events need more municipal support than they would typically get, then we need to look at that differently. If we're saying that we want to dedicate $25,000, what's that for? Because if it's just to get apparel and then sell it, we don't need to have a budget assigned to that because it's a revenue and cost stream. But if it's for something else to give to other people to do other activities, then we should just recognize that and how we're going to actually distribute that.
Councillor Bartley?
Thank you, Mayor Kentner, and I'm not on the board that's putting this on. I expected you to be looking for money for advertising. Maybe you need to rent the hall, maybe you need to rent the arena. That's what I think Matt's looking for. Is there expenses that you need this money for?
Yeah.
Not for shirts, because that money's coming back, but you've got to have some expense.
So I think maybe leave the motion as it is, and you might say an upset limit of $25,000. Does that work for you, Harley? Because you're right, these meetings have been good, but we could really benefit from having somebody who has events experience involved. And I think all of the people have a certain amount of experience, but what seems to be lacking is, we so far almost everything has come to the point where we say, well, we'll have to check that out with staff and see where we go from there. So we just want somebody from staff who can really, say aye or nay, based on their experience with events in our community.
So that is pretty different from just booking steering committee meetings and providing minutes. We can work our way through this, that's fine, but I just want to make sure that we all know what we're supposed to be doing, because what can't happen with this is that every 2 months we change our plan.
No.
It's got to be fairly clear now, as Councillor Barley said, we're talking about this happening in 6 weeks' time, not after a budget process and so on. So we just need to get there.
So we need to vote on the second amendment, the first amendment.
So the amendment to the amendment, I think in essence, is use reserves now instead of during 2024 budget deliberations. So yay or nay to that?
Yeah, I would say. Yeah.
We just need a vote on it.
Sorry?
We need a vote.
So you're putting that motion to us, all in favor? That is carried. Thank you.
Okay, so then the amended amendment is to replace the existing enacting clause with that we will use $25,000 from reserves, up to $25,000 in reserves to assist with this, and a member of staff will be available for meetings and minutes and so on.
Okay, all in favor? And that is carried.
Okay, and so then finally, now we've done that, we've basically covered all of the enacting clauses, but because there is other language in there, we need a third vote to say that all of that together is approved.
All in favor? And that is carried. Thank you for weaving us through that, navigating it. Adoption of minutes, the council, sorry, we go. Oh, yes, I beg your pardon. Councillor Bell, you have a motion. Do you want to maybe discuss or at least read your motion, and then we'll get a seconder?
Council, Meaford has received complaints with the sake of the intersection of Clinton Street and Cook Street, Whereas the intersection is currently a two-way stop with a stop sign on William Street, and whereas council is committed to ensuring safety of pedestrians and vehicle users along municipal roads, therefore, be it resolved, council municipality hereby directs staff to bring forward a report considering options to improve safety at William and the street intersection, and that the options considered should include, but they're not limited to, changing the direction of stop signs, four-way stop, no parking restrictions around the intersection, and a flashing light above the intersection.
So I hope people heard that. You didn't have your mic on.
Can we do it again?
I'm just looking to our sound producer. He needs to repeat it. Yes. Okay, go ahead and lean into it.
I'm sorry, I didn't have my mic on. So what I'm bringing forward here is an amendment to staff to look into the intersection of William and Cook Street because of safety concerns that have been expressed over a period of time, and that there are options that we would like staff to look into. And they're not limited to changing the direction of the stop signs, four-way stop, no parking restrictions around the intersection, and a flashing light above the intersection. So I was pleasantly surprised when I first brought forward this notice of motion that you, Mr. Mayor, and Deputy Mayor, and our clerk have had a conversation about this. So it is something that some residents have been watching and seeing transpire. This is definitely not about a business that uses services from a variety of service providers. And it's not every day that this happens, but when it does happen, I have seen delivery vehicles use Sykes Street and pull over to the business at the corner, and they'll pull over on Sykes Street. I've also seen where delivery vehicles will actually use the William Street. And when that occurs, the stop sign is obscured. And so from a safety aspect, it may not be the residents of the town that are quite familiar with William Street, and they know just from lifelong doing, you should stop. It's for folks who may not know when they see no stop sign and they can travel right through William Street, and it's Cook Street that's got the straight through. And I'm hoping that we can, with staff looking into this, come up with a way that it improves that particular corner should this happen. And I know, Madam Deputy Mayor, with your business across the way, you have probably witnessed that far more times than myself. And I think since my time on council, I think I've had this brought to my attention probably 6 or 7 times. So anyway, I hope that council can just raise their hands and have staff look into this and see what we can do for safety at William and Cook Street intersection.
And all we need is a seconder to proceed. So seconded by Councillor Forder. Is there any discussion at all? I think all of us have, go ahead, Councillor.
Thanks, thanks, Your Worship. Thanks, Councillor Bell. This is a bad corner. It has been bad for years, and I have to confess that for some reason, whenever I turn off the highway, it's starting to go west on William Street. I don't know. There's an urge to go right through. Cook Street is the through street, and I don't imagine I'm the only one who maybe has that temptation. So no, we need some changes there.
Councillor Forder.
Just a quick comment, and Councillor Bell, thank you for bringing this forward. My office is right on that corner, and so just like Shirley has a lot of experience with that area, I would say once or twice a week I'm almost T-boned in that intersection, and I hear clients tell me this on a regular basis as well. And with those new townhomes that are behind the Dairy Queen, we have a lot of little children that play on that area street as well. So people are just ripping along Cook Street because it's a throughway. So very community safety. This is something that's very worth looking at. Thank you.
I think I know somebody who was T-boned there, and he keeps on my case about this, and I've raised it many, many times. But this is the way to deal with it. And congratulations, Councillor. It's just exactly what we need. Are you ready to vote? All in favor? That is carried. Thank you very much. So moving on to a few items on the agenda here, adoption of minutes, the council meeting for October 30th. We need, I guess, a motion to adopt them. Moved by the deputy mayor, seconded by Councillor Bell. All in favor? That's carried. Any thing of anyone wants to raise from our communications agenda? Councillor Bell? Yeah, put your mic on again. Sorry.
Item D,
Okay.
Gray Sable Conservation Authority draft budget.
And your worship, F, please.
Okay. All right. So go ahead, Councillor Bell.
So I thought that maybe some of my fellow councillors would have some questions about when they read through the draft budget. The big impact was the percentile, which the board of directors voted on, and 4% for wage increase was voted on. The board of directors were really quite split between 3% and 4%. There were no directors that had any appetite for 5%. And what I asked, and I did vote in favor of a 4% increase, was I asked the question about when was the last time that the staff at the Conservation Authority had a wage review, and when that transpired. And Councillor Urick, if I'm wrong on this, it was 3 or 4 years ago that they had done that. And when they did that, they put themselves in a position of wanting to be at the 50th percentile. And so when it was promoted for 4% would bring them up current and would keep them put into that place. And so that's really the biggest impact on it, because it's $83,541 extra. And when that first came to myself, and I thought about that with the number of municipalities that are involved in Gray Sable, I just did divide by 8, it's like 10 grand. And I'm pretty close. When you read the report, I think, didn't write it down, we're pretty close as a municipality of Meaford, requiring 10 or 12,000. So when you break that down, you know, it's like $200 a week for extra wages for Gray Sable Conservation, and they do a fantastic job. And anyway, that's the biggest impact on that, along with the change that they did with the how they look at the watershed. And the municipality of Meaford, as we're all aware, we have a lot of watershed. And I know Councillor Greenfield, when you were on the board of directors there, you got Blue Mountains, and they have a lot of watershed, and they're a smaller number, and they pay a greater value than what we do. And it all has to do with that watershed and how it's determined. And it's called the CVA, and it's a current value assessment of what's inside our municipality in the watershed. So I just wanted to bring that out. I wanted to talk about the fact that it was the wages for 4%. That was the biggest impact, quite truly, on their presented draft budget.
Thank you, Councillor. And Deputy Mayor?
Thank you, Your Worship. And I just wanted to ask Mr. Smith, if I may, in relation to F, because we understand that the deadline for delegation requests to Roma is next Monday, the 20th. So what are we thinking, Matt?
Oh, so many things, Deputy Mayor, so many things. My suggestion is that we apply for 2 deputations. I think I know you've all heard me say before that my general recommendation is that we only do deputations on stuff that we really think is really important, or that we have a chance of making some difference on. And my suggestion is for Roma, but also for AMO in the summer, and probably for another round of these at least is that we concentrate on the wastewater treatment plant. It's the provincial priority to get more housing, and the only way we in the municipality can have significantly more housing is by having an expanded wastewater treatment plant. As Val mentioned earlier, the cost of the proposed expansion is going to take us right up to our debt limit. And that will also involve a huge amount of annual repayment, which will not be pleasant on our budget. So what I am intending to apply for, unless I hear otherwise today, is for a deputation both to the Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing and to the Minister of Infrastructure to say, this is where we're at, this is what our capacity is, this is what we've been told the expansion costs will be, here's our debt limit and how we cannot afford that and the debt repayments that come with it, and please give us some money.
Deputy Mayor?
Thank you, Your Worship. And yes, I completely agree and support that, Matt. And I'm wondering what your thoughts are, recognizing the county is considering a delegation to the Ministry of Education in relation to the tract property specifically. And should we piggyback on that, do our own, or just accompany the county, or how do you see that?
My opinion will be that we should accompany the county for that one. You know, this is their request that they've made, and yes, it's in our municipality, but I don't think we can make a better argument by doing that twice. I think we make a better argument by presenting a lower tier and an upper tier together. So if that's what the county's intending to do, I'm sure that Kim and the warden will be in touch with the mayor and deputy mayor and myself, and we can manage that.
I think we have completed our agenda then. There's nothing else on the communications agenda. So at this time, council is going to go into a closed session in the council chambers at about, I'm going to say 4:20 this afternoon with the interim CAO and deputy clerk in attendance to discuss personal matters about identifiable individuals and specifically candidates for appointment to the Intertownship Fire Department Fire Board. And when we come out of...
So we just need a mover and a seconder and a vote on going into closed session.
Yes, so I need a seconder, Councillor Forder, all in favor, and that is carried. And we'll see you on the other side. So just reporting out from our closed session, which didn't take very long. We just dealt with the matter at hand, and now we're going to bring forward a recommendation that be it resolved that bylaw 2023-71, being a bylaw to appoint a citizen member of the Intertownship Fire Department Board of Management, be taken as read a first, second, and third time and finally passed. Need a seconder for that? Sorry.
And just to identify the name that will be on the bylaw, based on the one that the public can see right now, just says XXXX. The name will be Ronald Robb. That is who we'll be appointing.
I guess I need a mover and seconder for this motion. So it's moved by Councillor Greenfield, seconded by Councillor Uhrig. All in favor? And that is carried. And that concludes our business today, and I declare this meeting adjourned.